On the table are pots with the man's favorite houseplants, and he picks up a spray bottle to water them. The hero is lying in a hammock with a small light-colored kitten sleeping on him. He strokes the cat, dreaming of a peaceful life, as a drop of water slowly rolls down the leaf. Sitting in a dark office at his computer, he wakes up and realizes it was just a dream. With a tired sigh, he thinks that life like that only happened in his sleep. He looks at his phone screen while it charges, sees a cat on the wallpaper, notices that 10 minutes have passed, then turns back to work and clicks the mouse. Then he walks over to the vending machine and grabs an energy drink. A young man rides a train as an announcement says it's the last one. He remembers it's his third night and 3 days away and finally heading home, thinking about his plants and deciding to care for them first. The automated voice announces they're almost at the final stop. A police officer approaches the young man and calls him over while he's still thinking about his flowers and how important it is to take good care of them. A young man sits with his head down while a police officer tries to wake him, repeatedly calling out. Meanwhile, his thoughts drift to the office plants, which look neglected and in need of care, as he remains completely unaware of the commotion around him. The main character silently asks for a little more time to rest because he wants to see the dream again, while the policeman starts to panic and loudly urges the boy to wake up. A young man opens his eyes, sitting in a wooden cart wearing a raincoat, with a bag resting beside him on the bench. He realizes he was dreaming and thinks about how long it's been since he last dreamed of the past. A girl riding a cart pulled by an ox near the river calls out to him, asking him to wake up. He leans out the window and asks what happened. His name is Lit Reincarnated, 19 years old, and the freckled girl driving the wagon apologizes for waking him and asks him to look ahead, gesturing with her hand. The heroes step out of the carriage to find a huge fallen tree blocking the road, its branches stretching toward the river and its massive trunk lying right across their path. The girl says she doesn't know how to proceed because there's water on the right and a cliff on the left. Lit thinks the tree is very big, and the girl sighs wearily. She says there's no other way. They have to turn back and take a detour, so they'll arrive 5 days late. The hero stays calm and even feels happy, seeing it as an added adventure to their journey. She turns to the cart and says they have a problem. They're carrying a package from the Empire's capital that she needs to deliver the day after tomorrow. She gets upset and almost starts to cry, complaining that the late penalty is deducted from her salary and that the quota still isn't met. The hero first looks at her, then turns away. She says it's time to go and pet the bull, then notices the boy has stepped away and asks why. He moves closer to the tree and tells them to back off because it's unsafe to stay there. He places his hand on the tree trunk and commands it to move using some unknown power. The tree is lifted from the ground and something happens to it. New shoots and branches begin to sprout around the tree, and the hero realizes that his past life ended on a train. He seems to have died from exhaustion and been reborn in this world in harmony. He just turned 16 years old. At this age, he becomes a hero. The tree turns into a tangle of branches, and the girl looks on, raising her hands in surprise. Many large branches intertwined and wrapped around the tree, lifting it off the ground. The whole structure made of branches crashes into the river with a loud splash, sending waves rippling all around. The hero stands with the girl under a big leaf sheltering them from the rain, saying the problem is now solved, and she's thrilled by what she sees. She screams with joy and asks what kind of magic this is, guessing it's either telekinesis or wind magic. The hero shyly says it's a trade secret and asks not to tell anyone. She pleads if she can at least brag about it, but he firmly refuses. Let's suggest they hurry up. The girl smiles brightly, agrees, and thanks him. They continue their journey, passing mountains, fields, and farms along the way. A young man looks out the window, smiles, and thinks it was the magic of plants, the accelerated growth and revival of life. He simply repeated the spells on a big tree, just slightly changing their focus. Lit believes that there are very few mages who control plants, and among all the wizards he knows, he's the only one like that, so he decides to keep a low profile. He remembers being born anew into a world of peace. As promised, he became the masked hero, and the century-long war against the demons finally came to an end. He defeated the demons using plant magic, restoring harmony to the world and bringing peace and safety once again. But in his personal life, nothing changed. Everything stayed the same as before his rebirth. He still remembers standing in the courtroom in handcuffs while people pointed fingers at him. 3 years have passed since then, and now they've been herding cattle for 10 days, far away from the capital. Summer closes his eyes and imagines himself as a relaxed aristocrat from the times of Hein, thinking a bullock cart might be comfier, but enjoying the slow pace just the same. A freckled girl is curious about what he does and immediately assumes he must be a powerful magician. Lita calmly replies that she's not working right now and asks in surprise if he quit his job and moved to the countryside. He says he quit his job, but actually he was fired and left everything behind. She asks again to be sure. He looks at the bottle in his hands and says he has dreams he wants to chase, admitting he's not a hero, a saint, or a perfect worker, but finally, he's free. This time, he decided to live life on his own terms, and the girl tells him they're almost there. She happily says that they will arrive in the one and only largest city governed by the guild. He leans out the window to get a better view, the wind tousling his hair. The girl explains that the city has over 100 guilds and no ties to any countries or peoples, hoping this is where he'll find what he's looking for. She says this city gives hope to many, and the hero wonders if he can succeed. They drive onto the bridge, and tall buildings rise before them. The girl introduces him to the city of freedom, Gauntland. The hero slams the mug down on the table and drinks half of his drink. He even drools when he imagines how delicious it is. He happily says it's even better here because in the Empire's capital where he used to live, beer was only served at room temperature. In this city, alcohol is banned until you're 20, and he believes this world has pretty strict rules too. He tastes the food brought to him, a bit of dried meat, pickles, and cheese, and thinks everything here is as usual, quietly noting to himself that the food in this world is never very tasty, either too salty or completely bland. He reflects on how the food here is nothing like in modern Japan, where people eat a lot. This is a different world, calm and harmonious. He remembers arriving in a world called Harmony 20 years ago, the largest of its 4 continents, an hourglass-shaped landmass with a wide strait separating the north and south. He believes that the Roman Empire rules the northern part of the continent. The Guild Union is an independent region that governs the southern continent. He reflects on the fact that Gauntland, the city he's in, is the only city on the southern continent governed by the Guild Union, and it's also the largest city in the south. He looks out the tavern window, thinking the cityscape doesn't feel like an imperial city. Maybe because the buildings are nice, or more likely because this place hasn't been touched by war. He notices the blooming plants and realizes they're well cared for. The girl behind the counter asks the guy if he liked the snacks, but he dodges the question and says the beer tastes great, which makes her smile happily. She looks at him and says he's different from the others. The girl asks if he's from the Empire, and the boy nervously wonders if he really seems like one. She says he's young and handsome, then looks at his coat and adds that it's very stylish too. She shifts her gaze to the other tables, where various people and beast people sit, noticing no one like him. The hostess asks how a man from the Reich ended up here and guesses he's on vacation, and he begins to respond. Lit confidently says that everything depends on your determination. The girl laughs, saying it's just youth, asks his name once more, then leaves because someone calls her to another table. The guy keeps drinking his beer, thinking he shouldn't have told her his real name, but he calms himself, knowing she doesn't realize who he really is, even though she figured out he's from the Empire. The hero recalls that since his arrival, he has spoken to several people who all reacted the same way. They recognized he was from the Empire's capital, but no one knew him by name, which means he's probably unknown on the southern continent. He happily thinks, if there's no news about him, it means no one there knows he's a hero. Lit thinks he came here to live alone, so he'll buy a piece of untamed land in the wilderness where he can study the plants and magic he loves. After that, he will plant his favorite plants in the empty spot. He imagines lying on the grass, thinking this is exactly how he wants to live. That's his dream and plan. Let's sit down and think. Maybe his idea will really come true after all. He's still very young. He finishes his drink, thinking he'll have to go buy the land and ready to fight to the end, then slips his hand into his jacket pocket. He takes out a flask with a seed, looking at it with hope, believing that this time he'll succeed in reaching his goal and finding true freedom. He arrives at a large building, the land management office, but is immediately denied the sale of land. A middle-aged elf with glasses apologizes sadly, saying it's impossible, while the hero looks at him tensely, a pouch of money lying on the table between them. The elf says he wants to buy a piece of land in the middle of a remote wasteland and is surprised that even such a plot is quite expensive. The man explains that the price is counted in large gold coins used only for big purchases like buying land, which is why the hero doesn't know about them, and adds that one of these coins equals 100 regular gold coins. The hero realizes he'll have to pay 10,000 gold coins for the land, and the elf adds that even a sack full of gold wouldn't be enough. Let hesitated and thought that despite all his heroic deeds, he hadn't managed to save much money. The elf looked at him carefully. A man asks the boy if he's a guild member, but Lit refuses, and the man says that's a shame. He explains that if the hero were in a guild, he could take out a loan or something similar, but reminds that this requires fulfilling certain duties. The elf advises him to join the guild, saying it's okay to dream big and that there he can get on his feet and earn money. But the hero interrupts, saying he doesn't like the idea. The guy sadly says he never wants anything to hold him back. The elf says that in this case, buying anything won't work, so Lit grabs his bag, puts it on, and declares he's going to earn some money. He says he'll be back soon and asks to have everything ready for the procedure on site. The guy is sure he'll get what he wants, while the elf tries to call him. An inspired man loudly declares that he'll sign the deal before lunch, because if he doesn't hurry, someone else might quickly buy such a great plot. The elf tries to stop him, not understanding what good this boy sees in such a remote place. A whole week's slow ride on horses through empty land with no one around. But he decides to wait, with 2 hours left until noon, and Let quickly rushes down the stairs. Lit walks down the street, surprised he never realized how costly buying land would be. And he also thinks about how even independent people here struggle to get things done. He analyzes the situation and decides to start a plant-related business, thinking about a material that can be bought cheaply. Let's remember what the elf said about the guild and share a little moment of sadness with him. He notices a fight in an alley where 5 men are loudly demanding something from a short girl. He decides to watch them, suspecting these men might hurt or mock the girl. And when one of them pushes her, she falls. The hero can't stand seeing the weak being humiliated, and can't understand how others can just watch it calmly. Many different people walk past the alley, but no one offers help. They just talk about the cruelty among themselves and keep walking. One of the men says it's time to stop, but then suddenly notices a handful of pollen falling from someone's hand. He casts a spell for rapid growth, causing vines to instantly wrap around the foes from head to toe, trapping them completely, while a flower blooms on one of the vines. A young man walks by with his hood up past men wrapped in vines who are slowly losing consciousness, but he reassures them it's just pollen. Light knows he needs to leave quickly before the men see his face, because if he causes a scene and becomes known, it will ruin his plans. He watches the girl as she stands up, relieved that she's okay, while she nervously glances at those who wished her harm. A blonde girl with cat ears crouches down and shouts in the defeated man's face that those who bully the weak will be punished by the heavens themselves. The hero is surprised to see the girl's ears and tail, and when she turns to him, he quickly hides his face with his hand. A girl smiles, steps closer, points at him, and asks if he was the one who saved her. Still hiding his face with his hand, Lit denies any involvement and regrets that, distracted by habit, he didn't manage to escape in time. She starts listing the facts that he's the only one here and looks at him closely, making him glance away awkwardly. With a slight smile, she says she senses a secret here and asks him if he is an enemy of the Empire. The boy finally lowers his hand and, nervous, asks if she knows who he really is. She responds negatively and sighs with relief, then says she'll figure everything out now and introduces herself as Manhwa. The hero is worried that no one should find out about him, because otherwise things could end just as badly as before. He's about to take more pollen from his pocket and thinks he should put her to sleep, but decides there's no time. He admits he saved her life, and Manhwa happily wags her tail, joyfully saying she knew it. Lit says he wants her to thank him for saving her, and the girl feels shy. He asks her to introduce him to people who need help or support with their business. He nervously points out that it's just a thank you, meaning no payment will be given, while Mon squints his eyes suspiciously. The girl sadly says that trust is very important in this field, so she decided to make this offer as a token of gratitude. Lit is happy to hear this, but doesn't understand why the girl is so upset. The guy says he just needs a job, and they head to a busy market full of small stalls and bustling crowds. Next to one of them stands a girl with lion-like ears and a tail, inviting people to come closer, and she cheerfully waves back when Lit and Mama greets her. She angrily asks Manhwa if he came to steal her donuts again, then notices Lit and asks if he's a customer, to which Manhwa introduces Lit as his benefactor, surprising the girl. The girl introduces herself as Mia and says she's the best trader in the Golden Road Market District. He says he's glad to meet her and mentions he's heard about some troubles she's been having. She nervously asks if it's about the debt. Manhwa interrupts, clarifying that he meant what she said herself, that she seemed like something was missing. Mia rubs the back of her neck in relief, while the boy wonders quietly if she's really okay. Mia explains that Gauntland is currently facing a serious shortage of potions, and the strongest ones, called high-level potions, are nearly impossible to find. He notes to himself that it's strange. It's peaceful now, yet the potions are still running low. He asks the girl why, and she replies it's probably because the right ingredients are missing, while Manhwa jots something down in her notebook. She explains that the red berries used to make the potion were destroyed by the sun and storms. They look at the clients with minor injuries, and Mia explains that's why fights between the mercenary guild guys and the secret guild always end up causing trouble, while the guy watches and slips his hand into his pocket. He shows them the bracelet and asks if it belongs to her. The girls immediately agree, and Mia asks where he got it from. He thinks he has a few samples with him, and if more are needed, his magic can arrange that. Life asks how much a high-level elixir costs, and Mia replies that none are available at the moment. She offers maybe 2 big gold coins, and the man asks again, surprised. He remembers the elf saying that these coins are used for big deals, and that 1 coin is worth 100 gold pieces. Mia notes that when potions are cheap, they cost 1 or 2 silver coins. But the man calculates that now the price has increased 40-fold. He is pleased with the information he received and understands that this is a significant increase. Lit asks Mia what would happen if she could always sell red berries and be the only one doing it. The girl dreamily exclaims that this would be a real victory in the economic war, and she would become rich. A guy runs away, shouting for them to wait a moment and promising he'll be right back, while everyone watches him go, confused and unsure of what's happening. He steps into a dark alley, carefully checking for anyone around, remembering that about 4 years ago, when the war ended, monsters supposedly stopped appearing, so now there are no difficult missions to hunt them down. As the boy buries the berry, he realizes he's not part of any guild, so he can't take on tasks here. Standing up and looking at the mound of earth, he remembers the elf was right. Joining a guild is the fastest way to earn money. But when Lit thinks about the guild, he feels sick from how they treated him, so he starts casting a spell on a berry, commanding it to grow and thrive, and a sprout emerges from the ground. Everything around him sparkles with magic, and waves of energy ripple out from where he stands. The boy is sure that this time he's come to find true freedom. Bushes with berries start growing around him, and it seems like now he can feed himself. He looks at the grown plants, picks the berries, enjoys their growth, and notices the fruits are beautiful and shiny. He thinks he'll need to make a few baskets, prepare some jam, and find a wizard who can dry them well. Then he returns to the market and hides behind a tent with the girls. The hero shows them 2 baskets of berries, and Mia happily exclaims that these are exactly the berries, and there are so many of them. Manhwa is surprised too. Lit says he can keep giving the same amount regularly, as long as the market price doesn't drop, which scares the girl. She imagines him in her mind as some kind of outlaw and asks in horror if he might be a young gentleman with a bad temper, which surprises the hero greatly. Lit tries to convince her, assuring it's a good deal for both of them. Mia asks again if it's true, and noticing her fear, he understands there are criminals in this world and tries to calm her down, promising he's telling the truth so she won't worry. He knows all this sounds suspicious, even to himself, and he's starting to get worried. Mia looks at him tensely and anxiously. Madame joins the conversation calmly, saying he's fine and calling him a good person, which surprises Lita. I'm sure Mia agrees and asks how much he wants for the delivery. He shows a sheet of paper with the amount and says that, including the deposit, it comes to about that much, believing he can't compromise when it comes to his future. Mia hesitates a bit but eventually agrees. She steps closer to him and confidently says that they've already made the deal. She says it's a great opportunity, and to not miss it, you need real skill and courage. The guy agrees, adding that without taking risks, you won't get anywhere, though he admits it's not easy. Mia says she doesn't know what the proverb means, and Lit adds that he was just trying to come up with something clear about why taking risks is important. Mia asks his name, addressing him respectfully as a valued customer. He realizes he hasn't introduced himself yet. Maya looks at him with curiosity. Manhwa also wants to know who he is, and the boy understands that they trust him and judge him by his actions, not rumors. He remembers being called many names, both lazy and hero, and smiles softly, a bit sadly, but warmly. He reaches out his hand, introduces himself, and says he's glad to meet them. Mia responds enthusiastically with a handshake and shows her respect. They shake hands, showing they've agreed and introduced themselves. Mia happily exclaims that she can finally repay her debt. The boy asks hesitantly if she's really a good negotiator, and Manhwa watches him with a slight smile, resting her chin on her notebook. Lit returns to the land sales office and apologizes to the elf for distracting him during lunch break, to which the elf replies that at least the hero noticed. The guy realizes that many see the administrator as some kind of robot who can always help with anything, and he feels sorry for the man. The elf asks if he solved his problem, and he says yes. He starts laying bags of money on the table, saying he earned even more than expected, and now has a lot more cash than before. Elv says again that no matter how many gold coins the boy has, it still won't be enough. But the boy is confident otherwise and opens one of the bags. He shows one of the coins and says it's mithril. The man is surprised, and Lit adds that he's heard the Empire and autonomous regions treat small gold and silver coins differently. The guy thinks he doesn't have enough money to pay for registration, but when he adds up everything he's earned, it turns out he has just enough. He didn't expect it to be so expensive, and the elf unties all the pouches to find mithril coins everywhere. A man grabs one of the bags excitedly, exclaiming that it contains rare coins made of unique metal, which can be exchanged in many countries and are rarely found even by him. Yet here there are 100 of them, while the guy looks around wearily. He covers the man's mouth with his hand, asking him not to shout, Thinking he doesn't want to draw attention, the elf is thrilled to see so many coins, while the boy silently hopes he won't tell anyone. The man apologizes and asks Lit who he is to have gotten so much money so quickly, and Lit awkwardly replies that he's just unemployed. The elf looks at him carefully and asks his name. The boy feels nervous, worried he might seem suspicious, while the man keeps his eyes fixed on him. He hesitantly says his full name. The elf apologizes, explaining that it's just a formality, and breathes a sigh of relief. A man picks up a pen and starts filling out papers, asking the boy if he's joined the guild. And when Lituorbli says no, the elf replies that's a shame. He stamps the paper and tells the boy to come back in the evening, promising to finish all his tasks before sunset. Lit thanks him and the elf says goodbye. Lit, with a joyful sparkle in his eyes and a smile, holds the document and says that it all belongs to him now. The man turns to the boy again and says the guild clothing store will start its sale in 30 seconds. But the boy doesn't understand why he's telling him this. The elf calmly advises him to change his cloak and hobbies. The young man realizes with surprise that the imperial emblem on the back of his cloak has been giving him away all along, while the elf awkwardly looks away. The boy thinks it's very kind of the man and thanks him, while the elf pretends he has nothing to do with it. He stops at a hotel for the night, hangs up and lays out his things. On the bedside table sits a flask with a grain inside, and a candle is burning. After his shower, he jumps onto the bed in clean clothes and says he hasn't had such a nice place to stay in a long time, especially with a shower. It really was a long journey. He lies on the bed, feeling satisfied that today was productive. They harvested the crops, bought land, got all the seeds and seedlings, and even arranged for an ox cart tomorrow. He feels happy now that he has money, and opens his eyes, staring up at the ceiling. The boy thinks back on everyone he met that day, and believes they are all good people. At first, Lit thinks maybe he should join the guild, but then changes his mind when he sees the cloak lying on the floor. The young man looks at the imperial emblem and firmly decides. This time, he won't make the same mistake and will definitely be free. He remembers saving the empire at 16 and what awaited him afterward. Nepotism, favoritism, envy, and other troubles. All just as bad as before his rebirth. He remembered how he ended up in another world and started a new life, then admitted to everyone that he didn't want to live like that anymore. The young man decided to give up fame and become a court magician. He made that decision and easily got the job, all thanks to his achievements. He believed that since the best of the empire worked here, he would be treated as a colleague and equal. After a few years, people started whispering behind his back that he got the job through the hero's connections, and that he scared everyone around him. Hearing this, the young man realized that nothing had changed here. He had a very simple job that had nothing to do with magic or studying plants, until one day a colleague came up to him. A man in glasses looked down on him and said that since the hero was free now, he had a job for him and asked for a favor. He was given a job in a dark, unwanted place, sorting through old, messy archives, despite already working overtime regularly. Surprisingly, digging into the research of old court magicians hiding a secret turned out to be quite an intriguing task. A guy came across a legend about the world tree and remembered that his own world had one too. As the boy got lost in reading and flipping through the pages, an image of a girl with 2 ponytails flashed before his eyes. Then something distracted him, and he looked away. There was a table with a flask on it, and a beam of light was shining out from the flask. As if spellbound, he stepped closer and reached out his hand to her. He ran his hand over the glass, his eyes fixed on the soft glow. The guy grabbed the flask, lifted it up to his face, and peered inside. Something inside was glowing strangely. He was captivated as he examined the silvery grain with a faint blue tint inside the vessel. Lit had no idea what this creature was. He had never heard of anything like it or seen anything similar. So thinking it might be a new species, he decided to study it. At that moment, a crowd bursts into the room, shouting at the young man to stay where he is. Holding the flask in his hand, he looks around at the people, confused, while Guyon, wearing glasses, shouts that he's being accused of poisoning His Majesty's tea and is now being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Lit understands what happened and slips the vial into his pocket. He recalls how, during the trial, everyone shouted that he faced the death penalty and was banned from ever returning to the Empire. And that's when he realized he had become a victim of power struggles at court and was wrongly accused. He realized he was trapped, but accepted his exile, and only then understood that transformation isn't quite the same as freedom. After that, he decided he had to do it himself. In the morning, he had breakfast and got himself ready. He put on his new clothes bought the day before, boots, gloves, and a raincoat with a buckle shaped like an upside-down letter L. The young man looked at himself in the new clothes and wondered if they really suited him, since he had trusted the seller to make the choice. He saw the same girl on the cart again, just like last time, which was pretty strange if he really planned to live out in the wilderness. She said his future home felt like an island in the middle of the land. and as he looked out the window at the busy street, he dreamily pictured it somewhere in the desert. He noted that this is exactly what he likes about this place. There's water, wilderness, and the nearest people are far away. The guy confidently says this is the best place for him, and the girl agrees. He says he's not planning to return to the city, and the girl replies that she will miss him. She says it will be hard for her to come, but asks to be informed if he changes his mind. Lit thanks the girl, and they slowly move away from the city. They drive past the fields, and the boy feels like his dreams, from both his past and present life, are finally coming true. Above all, he wants to grow a variety of plants, beautiful flowers, vegetables, fruits, and even rare and unusual blooms. Day passes and night falls on the road. The boy dreams of waking up in the morning, going to bed at night, eating what he's grown and gathered himself, and living a calm, happy life for his own joy. They arrive, the girl waves goodbye to him, and he waves back. He sets his suitcase down beside him. Lit looks around and sees no city in sight, only his own world, and life stretching as far as the eye can see. Before him stretched an endless desert, yet he opens his arms and feels true freedom right in front of him. Looking at the sunrise, he says with awe that this is the best world of all. Lit takes a small vial with a seed and wonders what kind of flower will grow from it. He sits down on the ground saying he can't wait, thinking his life is about to become calm and peaceful. About a week ago in the capital, Mia is happy that only they have powerful potions. She offers Manhwa to try their delicious food, but Manhwa declines and writes something in her notebook. Mia asks if she has any plans, and Manhwa replies that she's very busy and that they haven't talked in a long time. She talks about a great wizard from the Empire's capital and is about to start a new article. Maya praises her efforts and says she'll join her. Manhwa says she's the best journalist in the Wings of One Bird News Guild, and right now she's chasing a rising star, Lit. Meanwhile, it spends the night in a tent in the middle of the desert, where dew appears on it by morning. A guy tosses and turns on the couch, unable to fall asleep, while a flask with a family inside softly glows on a suitcase nearby, and he can't figure out why the room feels so cold. A pixel girl with a serious expression is simply sitting above him, staring straight at him. She looks at him and demands that he stand up. A young man opens his eyes, greets the girl with good morning, and jokingly asks if it got cold because of her gaze, then calls her Navi, a artificial spirit. He tries to ask her for a little more sleep, but Navi yells at him to get up. Lit awkwardly tells her they haven't seen each other in a while and asks how she's doing, but she immediately notices he's hiding something behind his smile. Navi explains that due to a long period without commands, she switched to emergency mode and asks where they are. The guy sitting on the couch tells them they're on land he bought, and it's a 10-day journey from here to Hortland. The girl realizes the city is on the southern continent and asks the boy what happened, addressing him as the host, but unsure of what else to say. The guy thinks artificial spirits are some kind of ancient magic, and in the Empire they're called semi-autonomous magical beings, but Navi are fully independent and move on their own. She steps closer and sharply asks if his brain hasn't rotted from such a long sleep, while the guy realizes Navi isn't just independent but also very loud. She looks him straight in the eyes and demands an answer. She asks again what happened to him, but he brushes it off, saying it's nothing serious. He just changed his surroundings and moved. She doesn't respond, then quietly says she's just a doll created by her master, an artificial spirit guide who follows his orders. The guy tells her she's not a doll because she has her own mind, but she replies that it doesn't matter. Even if she makes her own choices and has her own will, she's still just a tool. Navi says her owner just gave her an artificial personality, but she's still just a thing. The guy asks the girl not to call herself a thing. She turns to him and says she understands that he wants to live independently, without relying on anyone or any magic. Navi adds that despite everything, tools feel sad when they're not used, and the boy reflects on her words. She says with suspicion that now she at least understands why he's in such a tiny tent, and Lit protests, saying it wasn't easy for him. The young man listens carefully to her words, and promises that if he ever needs anything, he'll definitely reach out to her, and Nai nods her head. She's happy with what she heard and says she's going to sleep. Lit wishes her good night, still thinking about the word tools he had to say to her. He gets dressed and steps outside, immediately feeling the biting cold, realizing they urgently need to find shelter. The guide decides to find a water source first and is surprised by how rough and uneven the terrain is here. He takes out his compass and notices that the mountains to the east are thickly covered with forest, so there might be a water source there, and decides to head that way. He thinks they're already starting to look for a house and need to keep moving toward the mountains. Good news. Thanks to the magic of plants, the soil can be improved, but the hero decides not to use it too often, wanting to live as a true adventurer and having only a few magical seeds. The man decides to rely on his own strength for as long as he can, grabs his suitcase and walking stick, and heads toward the mountain, remembering it's been a long time since he last walked. He's barely breathing, almost leaning on his stick. He's struggling. The boy looks at the eastern mountains right ahead and wonders how to reach them. He convinces himself he's not using magic and is acting on his own, slowly moving forward. But after a few steps, his staff slips from his hand and falls to the ground. The boy takes advantage of his rapid growth to build a cart and rails he can ride on. The hero justifies himself by saying that even in the old world, as a dedicated gamer, he wouldn't have wandered aimlessly across the map. He rides in a little cart along the tracks, the wind blowing through his hair, and he feels pure joy, thinking how amazing this is. Leto quickly slides down, comparing the ride to a roller coaster, and suddenly wonders, what if this could be turned into a train? He thoughtfully says that a train in another world sounds really interesting. The hero squints with satisfaction, decides he has enough speed, and lowers the wooden shutter to slow down. To his horror, he sees the lever break, but the cart keeps racing down the tracks at the same speed. The guy realizes something's wrong. The hill is steep and he's picking up speed, but then he smells smoke and sees his tire is on fire. At that moment, something else catches his attention. At the end of the path, where the rails haven't been laid yet, he spots a big rock and realizes he might run into it. He's panicking because he thinks if he doesn't stop, he'll crash at full speed. His mind is already cursing and bracing for impact. Lit calls Navi and tells her that map-making has begun. After a quick analysis, Lit says there might be a descent 220 meters to the north-northwest. The girl says there are only 4 seconds left until the big rock, but the boy cuts her off as the cart keeps racing forward. He knows there's no time to build the tracks, so he casts a new spell. He throws down seeds and commands them to grow faster. A cart on rails shoots upward and breaks apart, while the boy flies over a massive cliff. He gently lands in a big flower-filled meadow, and laughing, says it was fun. Navi appears beside him and notices the flower cushions he made, casually asking if he's alive, to which Lit happily replies that she arrived just in time. The guy thanks her for saving their lives, and the girl smiles softly, genuinely. She says there's no need to thank her, as she's just a tool. But Lit just brushes it off and says she's connected again. The first voice Novi heard was hers. She asked how he was doing and welcomed him to harmony, just like the system does in the game. The young man created a body for this voice using ancient magic he discovered in the ruins, and that's how the artificial spirit came to be. He literally brought this instrument to life, as if turning it into a living being. At the same time, the boy really wanted her to be his girlfriend, and he confidently said he would tell her why he was here. They talk late into the night. Navi looks at him sadly and asks why he didn't tell her sooner, and he replies that if everyone finds out he's an outcast, she'll turn away from him for 3 months. Navi grimly says that 12 months of torment will be more than enough, and Lit thinks that's scary before he continues his story. The guy adds that he didn't want her to hear all that nonsense, while the girl is sure he's forgotten everything and sincerely asks Garth if he missed her. The summer looks at her with a shy smile, then lifts his head to the sky and says he's finally free. He happily gazes at the sky full of shining stars, dreaming of true freedom. Nava looks at the boy with sadness. She says she roughly understands what's happening and switches to sleep mode. Lit wishes her goodnight. The guy stands up, thinking he knows Navi is angry and upset with him because he didn't call her before starting to build the house or something like that, to prevent this from happening. He gazes thoughtfully into the distance, then confidently raises his hands and says he'll sleep in the tent tonight and make it even better than before. But Navi stops him, wanting to say something. She claims that 93% of his property was completely destroyed. The woman is shocked by her own words and realizes the tent is destroyed. He asks her to find them a new place to stay, but she no longer responds. Behind the rock, a girl is watching them. Lit counts everything that broke during the fall as he sits beside the wreckage and realizes almost nothing is left except a blanket and a few seeds. Pulling his knees close, he sadly admits it's much harder than he ever imagined. He grabs his staff, says nothing can be changed now, and stands up, thinking that the main thing is to survive. A young man waves his staff, throws seeds, and chants a spell for rapid growth, causing green vines to sprout from the ground before him. They twist and wrap around each other, growing taller, and somewhere among them, apples are already starting to appear. The mountain peaks look like lanterns glowing brightly inside, and Lit closes his eyes to focus. He opens his eyes and confidently looks at the newly built fence and the yard with lighting. Then he fixes his gaze on the middle log cabin raised on small stilts and decides this is where he will live. In the yard, he builds a makeshift tap from branches sticking out of the ground. As he approaches it, he thinks the most important thing in life is a steady flow of water, but only a few drops drip from the tap, and he crouches down, feeling upset because the drought has made it impossible to reach the underground water. He thinks he's come so far he can't find the river. There's something like a path here instead. He guesses the river once flowed here, and looking at the map, he notes that even with GPS, this place still feels like a vast wilderness. Let's think about Tamiya. Is it true that the land he bought has no water at all? The hero recalls his conversation with the elf and remembers there was a flat plot set aside for building, some wasteland, and a water spring. He's sure he asked for land like that, so now he wonders if some kind of mistake was made. He looks at the small amount in the cup and thinks it's good that there's at least something there. And though he'll have to wait, over time it will be enough to grow useful seeds. The guy recalls the so-called mysterious experimental seed and is glad it's okay, since he took it from the archive before testing began. Lit is sure it's something very valuable, and he thinks it's a tree seed, so he decides to grow a seedling from it first. He takes a small pot, fills it with soil, happily takes out the seeds, and plants them. The boy lifts the piece toward the sky, eagerly wondering what will eventually grow from it. He thinks the soil needs watering today since it will be watered tomorrow morning. Then, the hero yawns, goes upstairs, tries to eat the apples he prepared, but grimaces at the sour taste after taking a bite. In the morning, the boy steps outside, looks over the garden beds, and glances at a nearby stone. He wonders if someone might be there, though he's doubtful, until he notices a hand gripping the stone. He panics, thinking it's just a hallucination, but quickly pulls himself together, gathers his strength, cautiously looks around, and approaches the cliff to peek behind it. A girl sits there, her hands covered in wounds, tightly holding and hugging a pot with a plant, tears welling up in her eyes. The boy is amazed by his discovery, realizing that the girl's tiara isn't just jewelry, but a real, living flower. He wakes Navi and asks her to assess the situation. She appears and reports that the reboot is complete. Once the assessment is complete, Navi reports that the girl is 14 years old, considered human, but her measurements remain unknown to the evaluation system, adding that she belongs to the race of flower people. The boy, thrilled by the news, exclaims he never imagined meeting flower people. The girl looks scared, and Navi, reproachfully noting her overwhelming anxiety, says it's too much, leaving the hero confused. The guy remembers hearing and reading about the flower people, those who live close to nature and know how to care for plants, but he thought it was just a fairy tale. A young man tries to calm the flood of thoughts in his mind. Who is this girl? Are there others like her? And why did she choose to plant crops in his field? At first, he tries to calm the girl down, tells her everything is okay, and asks if she has any problems. Navi tells the boy that people believe the flower folk can't understand other languages. The girl looks at him nervously, and he notices the plant in her hand. Lita recognizes the spring berries but sees they are sick, and she realizes she was the one who planted them in this field. He sits down next to her to be on the same level, starts by saying his name, and tries to learn hers. The girl hesitates a bit, but then asks again and looks at him closely. Navi wanted to say more, but the girl softly calls her name, Frau, and the flower on her tiara blooms. Her entire tiara blossomed on her head, and she now says her name more confidently and loudly. The guy says he's glad to meet us and explains that he's a mage who controls plants, while Lit notes that Fruk understands simple words. Navi asks him if he'll help her deal with Fru, and he replies that Fru isn't a serious threat to their plans. Fraud looks sadly at the plant petals in her hands, and the hero reassures her. Don't worry, I'll fix everything. Everything will be fine with me. The girl turns to him, surprised. He plants a seedling in the garden bed and ties it to a stake. Then, sitting beside the plant with Fru, the boy explains it needs water and iron, so he sprinkles iron powder on the soil before watering the seedling. He casts a healing spell, and thanks to his magic, the plants grow healthier. The leaves come alive, becoming brighter, juicier, and greener. The girl watches everything in surprise, quietly sighing, while the boy, thinking he's just helping the plant use its healing powers, tells her not to worry, but suddenly falls silent and looks at her in amazement. The flower on her tiara blooms fully, almost completely covering her head like a delicate crown. A boy with sparkling eyes gazes in awe at a magnificent plant. He believes this flower blooms when it's happy, and he really likes that, having never seen anything like it before. A woman awkwardly thanks a guy bit by bit. Lit looks at her with surprise. The girl smiles brightly and this time sincerely thanks him from the bottom of her heart. The guy thinks it's really cute. Navi appears and asks if they're in trouble, but Denise reassures him that the plants aren't dangerous, and the girl modestly agrees. Froth stood up and placed her hands on his chest, thanking him non-stop. He looks at the girl with sympathy. The young man sadly guesses that Fru must be in a tough spot to take such a risk. She decided to plant berries in his field, hoping to find fertile ground. He imagines her struggling for years to save a plant on dry land at night. Navi tells him Fru's love for him only grows stronger, and when he sends her to bed, she reminds him not to forget his own dreams. He thinks again that he wants to be alone, and sees no point in getting involved. viewing the girl as a stranger. But she clings tightly to his clothes, and he notices she's trembling. The guy explains that the springberry is a peach-like berry tasting like raspberry, used to make various potions, but instead of energizing, it turns into a sour juice. And he emphasizes this only happens in humans. Lit gently places his hands on her back, embraces her, and thinks that this berry has healing powers. He thinks Frau wants to help her people, and hearing this, the girl's eyes widen in surprise. Far away in the eastern mountains lies a village where the flower people live, dwelling in small houses built high up in the trees. All the residents are looking somewhere with worry on their faces. The trickster led him to her village. They sit inside someone's house, and Led asks if they drink the healing water made from forest berries. But the trickster doesn't understand what she means. The guy rephrases his sentence to make it easier for her to understand. She agrees. And Lit thinks that the springberry infusion is what they call a potion here. He recalls that for the second year in a row, spring berries have been almost non-existent. The harvest is meager, and the plants die before they even sprout. He asks if all the berries have died, and Fru confirms they have, making life increasingly difficult for the locals. He realizes that healing infusions are no longer made from spring berries, and the flower people who can't live without them are quickly growing weak, especially noticeable among the elderly and children. The guy understands that anyone can die, and the girl, tears in her eyes, agrees. The hero looks at the trembling girl and realizes she is the village elder's daughter who had tried her best to save him. Leith frowns. He realizes that things are actually much worse than he thought. Lit believes this berry is a medicinal plant and thinks that using it can help fight the diseases common in this area. The guy thinks, from what he's heard, it never rains here, but the mountains are damp, so maybe there's underground water in the mountains, but the locals just can't access it. The hero also notices that the seedlings lack iron and fresh water, and concludes that the main problem is a shortage of water. He gets up from the table and says he'll plant spring berries in his field because he has groundwater. Frau Lei looks at him in surprise. He notices the land has already been plowed. Nava interrupts him, asking if he wants to help the settlement, and the boy agrees. A girl from Jackson warns that even Jackson's land can become barren from constant planting, and without water, even he struggles to survive. She asks if this won't distract him from his goals, and if it might be better for him to live alone and worry-free. The girl builds tension, reminding him of his past lives and how hard he tried, pointing out that he's about to make the same mistake again. The guy smiles, reassures her that he'll be fine and take care of himself. Then the vision fades away. He sighs, planning to enlarge the underground water pipes and extend them to pump more water, and with a bit of iron added, he'll easily manage his growth simulator. The boy assures her the plants will grow well, but the girl, doubting him, asks again. Lit thinks that even with magic there still won't be enough seeds, and large-scale watering and healing will require people, making it a very difficult task. A girl runs out of the house asking the villagers for help, and after a while, the boy watches the scene with surprise. All the residents arrived confident and ready to help. He finds it strange to realize he's an outsider from a different background, but despite that, they trusted him and came together, so he doesn't want to let them down and promises to make things right. Already in his own yard, the boy wonders if springberries have their own language, just like flowers do. He waves his staff, imagining growth as shoots quickly reach upward, while flower people pass buckets of water hand to hand to water them. They water the garden beds one by one, each tending their own, while the hero thinks about sewing. The guy silently adds one more condition. In the evening, he tells Fru it's time to go to bed, but she stubbornly stays in bed while Lit looks down on her. This honors the noble spirit of those who never give up, even after defeat, and keep fighting for their land, even when it lies empty. The boy starts growing rapidly while the girl watches the field intently. Everything they worked so hard to plant is finally sprouting and blooming, and the whole community is joyful and jumping with happiness. A sly woman with sad eyes approaches the ripe fruit, then breaks into a joyful smile. They are building a big campfire. They set a big table with all kinds of dishes, crown the guy, and keep thanking him. He barely has time to explain, tries to say he can't eat it all, and wonders where that crown on his head came from. Lit asks people not to send their daughters to live with him, as it looks suspicious, while the villagers keep thanking him over and over again. The guy looks at everything and grabs his head, unable to understand how this happened. He recalls how they worked for 3 days and nights to save the berries, then made a brew from them to give to the sick. The doctor notes that, thanks to the team's efforts, the patient has started to recover, and says with relief, "After 3 sleepless nights, everything is finally okay." After a while, he and Flower sit on a log, with the girl holding him close. He wonders silently why she's so close to him, and asks her not to get attached. She pouts, looking annoyed, but the guy thinks it's really cute. Here, Navi interrupts the conversation, pointing out that a relationship built on that kind of foundation won't last long. The guy asks what she means, and she replies skeptically that now he's the savior of an entire race, to which Lit tells her to shut up. A little later, Navi asks the hero why he decided to help these people. He looks thoughtfully at the guests and says he's simply curious to be among them because they value nature just as much as he does. The girl doesn't fully believe him but accepts his answer anyway. Here, Fru notices someone by the fire and stands up, and the others quickly take notice too. She starts crying and runs to her as fast as she can. She rushes to the girl and hugs her tightly. The girl barely holds back tears, says something to Frau, and responds to her while crying. Navi says this girl is very beautiful. The guy notices she's also recovered from an illness, and then, lost in thought, he realizes something important. He says she is the leader of this tribe, Mama Fru. Navi says the girl really looks a lot like her, then shifts her gaze to the boy. Tears well up in Litz's eyes as he says he was glad to help them, while the girl watches him closely. She remembers that at first she was just a voice. Only he could recognize her, and she ran all the tests for him. One day, Lit started talking with someone about abstract topics, and paused for a moment before replying. The boy was delighted to hear the answer and started asking all sorts of questions, and they quickly fell into an easy, relaxed conversation. In the future, she stood by him, supporting him through everyday moments and the toughest times when life was on the line. One day he asked her if she felt bored without a body, and she said that since he talks to her, it's not a problem for her. Let's forgive her by remembering how he created her body, hoping that this magic would help her become independent. The young man said bitterly that he didn't want to use her as a tool, and she looked at him gently. Navi smiles and tells him he always stays kind, while Lit brushes it off, saying he's just a regular person at best. She says that's not quite the right word, and he asks what she means. The girl admits she was wrong to disagree with him about helping others and congratulates the boy. She notes that she has never seen so many people benefit from his actions before. He looks at the happy residents. Some are drinking, some are quietly sitting, and others are happy to spend time with their loved ones. The young man sees the mother and daughter finally reunited and feels a warmth in his heart, admitting that Navi was right. No matter what, the girl notices he often takes on too much responsibility and asks him to accept her help, promising she will definitely support him. She sincerely wishes for him to live according to what his heart tells him. Lid was surprised when he thought he saw a smile on Navi's usually calm face. The guy smiles and says the girl is being very open today, and she shyly looks away. She looks up at him, her cheeks flushing, as he keeps teasing her, saying that Navi can be shy sometimes too. She looks at him reproachfully, while he laughs, apologizes, and thanks her. The guy thinks about how he'll enjoy life here alone without talking to anyone else. He looks at Frau waving to him and suddenly realizes that the people he met in Galtland are nothing like those he's known before. So the boy reaches out his hand to the girl. Fru takes his hand and pulls him close. He doesn't resist and stands up. A year ago, he thought drunken parties were just torture, disliking the atmosphere and feeling uncomfortable around people. But now, dancing with Fry by the campfire, he smiles genuinely. The guy mentally notes that he's feeling pretty good. Fry stands beside his mother, asking the boy to say his name. At first, he said it without thinking, but then realized it was unkind and repeated everything properly. Fry calls him by name and, with a trembling voice, tries to say that they would like to work on his field. He awkwardly asks what she means, then it finally clicks for him. The guy asks once more to make sure it's really true. At this time, an article is published in Galtland about an experienced mage from the Empire's capital who has arrived on the southern continent. Mon Mahans takes them outside and promotes them as an additional offer. Mia asks if it's about literature, and the girl angrily yells at her not to ruin the story. Manhwa says this story is hers alone, and she'll earn from it little by little. The article falls right at the feet of a blonde girl with a long ponytail. She's reading about a person who can control plants and a wizard. With sparkling eyes, she recognizes Lit in the description and says she's finally found it. The girl tightly grips the newspaper, full of emotion, and sincerely says that she, Adele, will definitely bring him back to the capital. On the windowsill sits a pot with unknown seeds dreaming of leaving it all behind to start a new life, working hard while reflecting on how they left everything and ended up in this remote wilderness. A young man gazes into the distance, reflecting that he did it all to live a calm and steady life. Then he notices the garden beds and is surprised to see that all the flower people are now working in his field, something he never expected. Navi says it all happened because he didn't say no when they asked, and the boy sadly thinks that seeing their determination, he just couldn't refuse. He checks their work and sees they've gathered even more than planned. 50 baskets of spring berries for his business and another 50 for making medicine. You watch as the flower people carefully tend to their plants and work the fields, while Fry waves to you. He happily waves back at her, while Navi looks at him with suspicion. She says with a gloomy look that he's lazy and will pay for it someday. But Lit doesn't realize that it's already happened to her, and the girl turns to him again. He reports that a stranger has entered their territory, and on the dry ground, a huge claw with sharp nails appears. A young man waves to the newcomers, saying everything's fine and that he was expecting them. Navi asks if he knows these people, while the flower people also watch the guests closely. Lit replies that they helped him a little bit. Maya and Manhwa happily wave back as they sit in a carriage on a giant sand lizard. Mia is amazed by how many red berries there are. They seem to be everywhere. Let's say he owes it all to the flower people, while the locals watch the new guests with suspicion. Manhwa notes the mention of the flower people in her notebook, while Maya, realizing she didn't know about them before, decides to approach since they've just arrived. She says she'd like to ask him to make one more exclusive secret deal with their guild, just between them. The guy thinks it over and sees the benefits. He doesn't have to worry about where to sell his goods, and his location stays secret. He wanted to suggest the deal himself, but is glad Mia did it first. He believes he can do better and says he has other things he'd like to sell, but still agrees to continue working with her. Before he can even share the details, Mia already agrees, saying her old instincts tell her this is the right choice. Manhwa notices with suspicion that Mia is joking even more than usual, and when Lit kindly offers to bring the document now, Manhwa stops him and suggests doing it later. The girl says it's her turn to do her job now. The boy is surprised, thinking they were in the same guild, but Mia assures him they're not, and Manhwa apologizes for taking so long to introduce herself. She introduces herself as the top journalist at the news outlet Wings of the Feather. The young man looks surprised as he glances at the newspaper just handed to him. The girl happily recalls reporting his actions well, so he could have thanked her. She reads a line about a mage from the imperial capital city, and Manhwa adds that she deliberately made herself the heroine who was attacked. A girl approaches him and warns that he'd better not make things worse. Mia adds that Wings of the Feather is a very influential organization, known throughout the city and possibly across the entire southern continent. This thought terrifies him beyond reason, as it would mean all their efforts are in vain. So he asks Navi for help. The girl refuses and angrily says she was deactivated at the time and doesn't know what happened. Lit has to admit it, and Man jumps on the guy, knocking him down. She mysteriously says he can tell them everything, her hair brushing his face, soft and pleasant like a cat's fur. He finds it hard to resist the softness of the fur when the girl presses down on him from above. The person first asks with a hint of surprise who lit it, then lets out a deep sigh. At that moment, Fry approaches them and interrupts their conversation. She asks if those are his friends. Everyone looks at her at once, and Mia notices they seem more like business partners, so she asks again what exactly he means by partners. Fry spreads his arms wide in a welcoming gesture, saying that the boys' friends are their friends too, while the villagers bring a barrel of drink and a warm welcome. The girls answer together that they're friends who love good food, already imagining the delicious treats inside that barrel. They're happy because it's Matatoa's wine, and the people around them are celebrating too. It's amazing that these flower people can do that, and Fry says that's exactly what cats love. The man thoughtfully says that this wine, in its qualities, is similar to matatabi, adding that the recipe has been passed down through Frau's family for many generations. The hero marvels at how many fascinating recipes they've preserved and breathes a sigh of relief. Thank you, Frau. It's good that this unusual step helped him calm down and think things over. He says he's going to meet Manhwa, and Frau eagerly asks if they're planning to have a good time. He declines, saying he has an important conversation and a serious business meeting ahead. To gather his courage, he takes a sip from his mug. A guy sits with Mia and Manhwa. They praise the dish and say he's interesting to talk to. He thanks them for coming, says he had a great time, and asks if they like the drink. Mom says it tastes really good, and the hero is happy to hear that, offering them more to drink if they like. They reply that he's very thoughtful. A little later, the girls are tipsy. Lit smiles at them and jokes that he never thought his party skills would come in handy, while Manhwa asks if he knows who made the drink. He says it was made by flower people and adds that their processing technology is truly impressive, turning wine and springberry juice into real wonders. Myanmar can't believe this is happening here, and Mia agrees, saying she'll have another drink. The man decides now is the right moment to act. He recalls their previous conversation when a slightly drunk man approaches him, saying she needs to see everything with her own eyes and urging him to hurry. He explains that he can't talk about himself because he doesn't want anyone to know he's here, but instead, he promises to share something more interesting, while Myanmar looks at him with suspicion. Lita tells the story of a famous sake made in a little-known region, about a mysterious flower tribe and a hidden treasure, while Manhwa admits she was surprised to learn about these people. She says it's too simple, but the story about the mysterious wizard who saved a disappearing flower species is much more interesting. The guy worries that even when the girl is drunk, she still acts like a true professional, but he can't give up on his ambitions. Lit suggests that Mia should sell this drink at the city fair, and Manhwa asks if he means the same deal. He points to the table, saying everything here is delicious, and with their reputation, sales will only get better. Manhwa agrees and asks about the drink, to which the guy replies it depends on who makes it, since people always want to know all the details. Manhwa understands that his story is needed to sell better, and he wants to share it gradually, in parts, while the girl says it's just a strange rumor with no truth or value. The man says that for an ordinary journalist, maybe that's true, but she has energy, isn't afraid of criminals or challenges, and is determined to investigate this story even in such a remote place. Manmi's eyes lit up as she said she had to be able to write a true story. Lit notes that their article sparked interest because it's connected to me and my products, and people really like it. He says customers enjoy drinking the beverages from my store and eagerly look forward to new arrivals. The hero admits he dreams of finding a village where he can settle down, enjoy delicious food and drinks, and dance happily by a big bonfire. He speaks with excitement about wanting to live happily and create a true paradise, what people call a utopia. Mama replies excitedly that it's not necessary to share everything. Sometimes a story can become a true legend, and the boy feels she understands him. Let's assume she did everything right. If this story becomes a legend, their brand will become even more popular. Lit reaches out to her, inviting her to accept the offer, saying it's beneficial for her, and adds that he wants to sign an exclusive contract with them. Manhwa notes that it's the same kind of contract Mia has. The guy says he wants the girl to live her dream life but asks that no one finds out about him. While Manhwa admits that if things go well, she'll have a lot of money, but hesitates and starts talking about being featured in articles. Mia interrupts her, jumps on Manmu and says she's in a bad mood, but the guy might be able to help. Lit realizes he should take this chance. He realizes she almost agreed and sincerely takes her hands, pleading for her to say yes. The girl presses her lips together, picks up a pen and says she can't help. She enthusiastically says she's ready to sign an exclusive contract with Lit, and assures that, as a top-notch reporter, Manmu Velika can be fully relied upon. They both hug the confused boy from either side and say it's their little secret. Manhwa says she's pleased to meet her, and Lit thanks her. They shout that we need to break free from poverty and become rich. Some say it's just another way to make a quick buck, but others ignore that, keep clinking their mugs, and celebrate a profitable deal, while Navi thinks this should have been the starting point. The boy feels he can protect himself and the peace of this place, and he has also found true friends here. A month has passed, and they come to him again. Mia runs out, shouting that something incredible has happened. Mia happily says their product has become a real hit in the city. Manhwa admits she's tired of constantly asking clients if they have any more information, but the guy notices that this story is gaining popularity, and people are getting interested. The girls happily exclaim that after working with Lit, they were expecting bags of money, while the guy looked at them with a warm smile. He's glad that his hopes for them came true and that they're steadily growing their wealth, and he's also happy they've kept their promise to keep his information confidential. Lit is happy because he believes the first stage is over. Now he has no money problems and a cushion to manage things. Navi greets him and suggests taking a little break, which the guy eagerly agrees to. He tells everyone, even the flowers in the garden beds, that it's time to celebrate. The guy suggests having a barbecue. He sets up the grill. Manhwa says it needs to be soaked in alcohol, and Mia agrees. The girl with white hair points out that everything should be done in order, prompting Mia to chase her around the area while Frau just smiles at the scene. Lit licks his lips as he looks at the big piece of meat. He believes the meat came straight from the butcher, and even asked a mage to keep it cool, so it's still fresh. They already have a fancy set from Mia, including special salt and fireproof skewers. He cuts the meat, threads it onto skewers, seasons it with salt, and places it over the fire. After a while, the food was ready. The vegetables had a crispy crust, and the meat was juicy and fragrant. The guy pointed to the right side of the grill where the food was cooking and explained it was for the journalist and the merchant because they don't eat onions or garlic. The girls were surprised he knew this secret about them, but it was true. The vegetable kebabs were for Fru and her friends, and then the guy gave another kebab to Navi, who accepted it with gratitude and a smile. When the young man finished handing out the food, he turned around to make sure everyone had enough and saw a crowd of happy people sharing good wishes with each other and with him. When he took a small bite, he suddenly froze and covered his mouth with his hand, as if something unexpected had happened, which naturally scared everyone around, and worried Navi immediately rushed to the owner, not understanding what was going on. The young man fell to the ground, and the frightened girls rushed to him, asking if the meat had been poisoned or spoiled. Without even getting up, Lit raised his second hand to his mouth, which only scared the girls more. But unexpectedly, the guy spread his arms wide, lifted his head, and joyfully exclaimed that the dish turned out to be surprisingly delicious. The girls froze in surprise, not expecting such a reaction, which seemed very strange to them. The journalist admitted it brought her to tears, and she wasn't the only one, as a few others also started crying. The guy promised not to do it again and asked the girls not to cry. A little later, as Lit was finishing his kebab, Mia approached him with a request since he was the owner of the place. She suggested giving this place a name, and Mom agreed, saying it's really awkward when a place has no name. Unexpectedly, Frau ran up to Lit with a smile, clearly showing she also wanted to know the name of this place. The guy hadn't really thought about it, but Navi noticed that the worried owner's taste was a bit off. Feeling awkward, he glanced at his assistant, surprised she understood him so well. The girl surrounded Lit and insisted that he immediately give this nameless land a name. Looking around, he fell into thought, carefully taking in the nature around him, the house he built with his own hands, and the girls beside him, as if recalling something from his past. Then he said the place would be called Togen Village, and the girls happily agreed because the name was truly beautiful. Only Navi noticed it was from his homeland, but that was not a bad thing at all. Old writers never imagined anything like this. Out in the middle of nowhere, far from anyone he knows, he's having an evening barbecue with vegetables he grew himself. And so many people around him, it's nothing like the life he dreamed of. But it didn't upset him at all, because he was happy anyway. He joyfully raised his hands and confidently declared that from that day on, the village would be called Togen. Even though many things didn't go as planned for the guy, this place still felt like a true paradise to him. Beautiful surroundings and good company. What more could you ask for? Although the guy hesitated that evening, maybe wanting some alone time, it was already late. He went to bed, and the girls around him were snoring, making it impossible for him to fall asleep. Let's imagine the moment when Navi came back to him with a report, saying that this time it wasn't a guest entering the area, but some stranger. Some kind of beast-like monster immediately acts aggressively. 100 years ago, underground ruins suddenly appeared in the northern part of the continent within the Roman Sea Empire, and because monsters kept emerging from them, the empire was plunged into war. To survive, the people of the southern continent built a massive wall on the isthmus connecting the south to the north, hoping to stop the monster invasion by completely blocking the only bridge between the two regions. This meant there should have been almost no monsters on the southern continent, so Lit couldn't understand how they ended up here. Navi pointed out that, in her view, there's a mismatch between theory and reality. The northern and southern continents barely had any connection, and that's when Lit realized he might have been relying too much on information from the Empire. But the guy asked how many monsters there were and what class they belonged to, and the assistant replied that there was only one, and its level was normal, not advanced. Monsters in this world vary greatly in strength and danger. The weakest are simple creatures easily handled even in large numbers. The mid-level ones wield magic and pose a bigger threat, while the most dangerous have their own armies and magical factories to create weapons and new beings. The girl asked if they should retreat, but Lit refused, saying that when he lived in the Empire, he often had to fight almost alone. These aren't just ordinary monsters, but creatures of a special kind. Lit wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. But first, everyone had to be evacuated to keep them safe, while the girls were starting to wake up. When the girls woke up, they screamed in terror, unsure if they were just drunk and imagining things, while the monster, more like a tiger, was getting ready to attack. The monster roared fiercely before attacking, and although Lit didn't want to, he ordered Navi to take everyone off the battlefield and decided to use a special battle herb since he had no other choice. When the monster got really close, the young man tried to grow faster, but someone called out to him and asked him to stop, so he immediately halted his attack. The plants faced the monster before they could pierce it, and the boy turned around, realizing the woman was calling him. The girl was summoning her people. She screamed, pointing at the huge cat, and her people immediately rushed toward it without hesitation, quickly realizing what Fruz had planned. The flower people quickly rushed up to the giant cat and surrounded it from all sides, leaving it no chance to escape. People bravely dodged attacks from the terrifying creature, while Lit tried to figure out what was happening and why he was being held, as a fierce battle raged all around. People holding bowls of some kind of water approached, took a big sip together, and then splashed the water all over the creature. Suddenly, the monster wavered and slowly began to fall, gently closing its eyes. In the end, he fell to the ground and fell into a deep sleep. No longer a scary monster, but a fluffy kitten with big claws and fangs, peacefully snoring in his sleep. Lit realized that the flower people had slipped something into his wine, so he was lucky it ended there. While the crowd cheered, Lit wondered how they managed to calm the monster in just a few minutes. But Navi interrupted him, saying that since they were already here, they needed to deal with the monster once and for all. In the Empire, things were simple. If you left monsters alone, they'd attack again, so they didn't mess around. They destroyed them on the spot. But then the guy noticed something and froze in place. The flower people surrounded the monster and tried to lift it, but it was too heavy, so they shouted loudly to encourage themselves. Lit wasn't sure if they really wanted to send him back to the eastern mountains, and then Fru explained that this cat guards the fields. Usually, he only eats berries and chases away animals that spoil them, so they gave him a little drink. Maybe today he was hungry because of the strong smell of meat, and when he looked into the eyes, he understood something. They live in symbiosis here, but the guy had only one choice: to get rid of them or fight back. He would have done just that if he were alone, but for now the flower people were slowly, though with effort, pulling the animal along. Novi sighed deeply, knowing this was just the beginning. But she gathered her thoughts and said she was counting on Lita, since he was the eldest in the village. The boy looked up, clearly moved by her words, and agreed. Then he ran to the flower people to help them carry the huge cat to the eastern mountains. The bird turned around and invited Frau, Mia, and Sleepy Manmi to join their mission. To celebrate defending their village, he suggested they work together first and then have another drink. A little later, after they finished, Let sat by the window, lost in thought. Navi would handle the accounting, while Fran's people took care of the fields and farms. The wholesale supplier will be the Trading Guild Golden Path, managed by Mia, while the Featherwings Guild, specifically Manhwa, handles all information-related matters. The village elder and chief protector is Sam Lit. The biggest problem is water. They currently survive on spring water, but it's uncertain how long it will last, and they can only grow crops that need little water, and not in large quantities. Another problem was a good quality food. What Frau cooks is actually tasty, but it all depends on the quality of the ingredients, and Litz believes making dressings or sauces is beyond him. Then suddenly, the guy was very surprised by something. He watched the pot on the windowsill with excitement as something began to sprout from the mysterious seed, a tiny shoot breaking through the soil. This plant turned out to be a monocot and very lightweight, with subtle shades ranging from blue to purple and red to orange, creating a beautiful, smooth blend of colors. The boy thought it was the glow of magic, even though he still didn't know what kind of plant it was, and he gently touched the tiny sprout with his finger. Then he hugged the pot tightly, not letting go, really liking the beautiful pot and hoping the plant inside would grow quickly, while Navi watched it all with genuine surprise. She said it was disgusting, which scared the boy, while the village of Togen was just starting to grow, and its people were ready to do whatever it took to make it better. Meanwhile, the mysterious seed axe had become a laughingstock for X. Morning came, and Frau woke up opening her eyes. When she wakes up, she immediately sits down for breakfast, then gets ready, and today her hair looks a bit messy. Today the girl is working in the field, tending the orchard with Lit and other villagers, and she's happy because this time there are more fruits than before. Meanwhile, everyone is relaxing and preparing drinks and juices, and the girl and her friends especially enjoyed stomping the berries because it felt like dancing. Then it was lunchtime, and the girl told Lit that they could eat the turnips they had planted last time. Lit happily asked if Frau had really prepared it all for him and the others. After a hard day's work, lunch tasted especially good. And then the flower people loved to take a little nap because they felt so comfortable and warm under the sun, while the trickster felt full of energy. Litten and Frau were just relaxing in the sun when the boy wondered if flower people do photosynthesis. Navi thought that was quite rude, and Frau froze, still not understanding many of the words. The girl took out the book she really needed right then. It was called Frozen Surprise. The girl was holding a folk dictionary, and happily said it was very important. Lit thought to himself that now it made sense why she understood their language. She had learned it from that dictionary, though where she got it from remained a mystery. Proudly, she admitted that a kind man had given her this long ago. The boy wanted to ask who could do such a thing, but once again something else surprised him. The book bore its owner's signature, which made Lit feel disgusted and afraid, while Navi noted that those times were truly terrible. Frama immediately asked if everything was all right, and the boy thanked her for her concern. The boy was amazed that his master came to their village and even taught them the language. But it's thanks to his mentor that he can talk to Frau like that, and he deserves credit for it. The girl just shyly glanced at the boy. She used to struggle, feeling scared and sad while everyone was sick and she didn't know what to do. But now everything is fine and everyone is smiling, even Lit and his friends. The girl smiled brightly and admitted she was very happy. Meanwhile, the boy remembered that the cats were supposed to arrive today, and just then he noticed Mia already greeting him. The young man asked where Manhwa was, and the cat admitted she left because Manhwa didn't show up at the agreed time. Maybe she stayed up all night and then overslept? Meanwhile, an unfamiliar girl ran through the desert holding a crying Manmu in her arms. She was happy to have found him, while the little cat apologized and explained she had no other choice. They immediately set off for the village of Togen to see everything with their own eyes. Lit suggested using special packaging for the berry alcohol and also recommended creating a separate image for each type of wine. Mia was pleased with the offer, It was a great way to make the product stand out, and she promised to talk to the master from the Artists Guild. The guy realized the task wouldn't be hard, but it promised to be interesting, until Navi interrupted their conversation with something unpleasant. Another uninvited guest was speeding towards them. Lit and Mia asked disappointedly if it was happening again, but the assistant angrily insisted she had nothing to do with it. But she did say that the owner knows him. The young man squinted into the distance, hoping he had no meetings scheduled for today. It seemed like he noticed something, but the stranger was already standing by the gate, about to come in. The girl climbed down from the beast she was riding, her cloak bearing the unmistakable crest of the imperial house. He realized that standing before him was Her Majesty Adele herself, with Manhwa shyly following behind, and Adele looked very pleased to see him. The girl was so happy to see the boy that she picked him up and hugged him tightly, causing his back to crack loudly. Adele awkwardly apologized to him, while Mia asked Manhwa who the girl was, but the cat just cried sadly and apologized, not knowing who she was. Pointing to Adele, Manhwa said this imperial woman told her she wouldn't let go until she got an answer, and the girl apologized for laughing, explaining it was a misunderstanding. She just heard the cat was a member of the Information Guild. Summer introduced everyone to a stranger named Adelia Le Romancia, the 6th princess of the Romancia Empire and commander of the 15th Imperial Legion of Knights. The girl waved her hands happily, noticing Lit was, as always, being himself. The boy also realized they hadn't seen each other in a while the cats whispered that this girl was too scary to be a princess. Adele admitted she didn't know Lit was here in the village and had a hard time finding him, while Frau, standing behind him, called out to the boy. The princess called Lita to return to the imperial city to join forces and defeat those who had driven him out, ready to take revenge on the courtiers herself. Her words frightened not only Frau but Lita as well. The girl insisted that strength was key, saying strength equals violence and violence equals strength, while the boy simply asked her not to justify violence with fancy words. But the princess proudly lifted her head. The young man admitted he appreciated the care but had no intention of returning to the imperial city. He just wanted to live a normal life, which left Adele completely shocked. If he became an ordinary person, the world would be filled with loners dreaming of destruction, or so the princess believed. She thought Lit was too modest, never revealing himself or his name, even during the war. He said he was tired of this imperial city. The princess first pouted, then sadly lowered her head. She assured him she understood, but the boy sensed it was just empty words, while the princess had already reached for her weapon. The girl drew her sword and charged at the furious Rickard, vowing to do everything she could to bring him to the imperial capital. But within seconds, the plants had tied her up and taken her weapon, while Lit, completely unfazed, just silently watched the girl. The princess looked up with excitement, exactly what she had been waiting for from Leto. But he had no idea why she was so happy. Deception interrupted the conversation, saying that arguing was bad, and suggested greeting the girl, even though Manhwa tried to stop him, thinking it was dangerous. Adela was surprised to come back and return Lit's, but they were happy anyway, while the boy seemed lost in thought. Then he decided to ask the princess for a small favor. Hearing this, she brightened up and her cheeks flushed slightly as she listened intently. They needed firewood for the party, but since a tiger had recently appeared in the forest, he turned to Frau for help and protection. More precisely, he asked for an escort. You have to be careful in the forest because trees can fall. Adele was already walking with the girl, wondering why she was doing this when she barely had any time. In the Empire's capital, a little earlier but already too late, one valley learned of an exile that became a heavy burden for it. She couldn't believe it, as he had done so much for the Empire's victory. A servant reported that some court mages were unhappy, feeling he was treated better than he deserved. Adele gripped her fan tightly, thinking everyone was probably jealous of his influence or something like that, knowing that meddling in court affairs was always a mistake, no matter how much you wanted to. The knights quietly whispered about how the princess had broken the iron fan. Everyone saw her as a tough warrior princess, all muscle and fury, but just one angry look from her was enough to silence them instantly. Tying her hair back, the girl ordered the transport to be ready to go after Lit, but the maid apologized, saying she couldn't arrange it. This weekend, the girl was supposed to have dinner with Julian. It was an important meeting that could shape her future, so the servant advised her to think it over carefully one more time. The princess promised to return on time, but now she was walking through the forest with Frau, gathering firewood, when suddenly Frau stopped, looked straight at the princess, and asked if she was really Princess Adele. The girl agreed and added that she was also the honorary commander of the Empire's 15th Legion. Frau was surprised and excitedly asked if Adele was really both a princess and a knight at the same time, and though she didn't understand his reaction at first, she soon smiled. She grabbed a stick and started waving it around, Then Adele explained that even if it looked that way, she still remained stylish. Not as stylish as Lit, but still. Frau clapped her hands with satisfaction, watching the performance. The lady asked if this princess was friends with Lit, and after a moment's hesitation and a blush, the princess replied that she believed their feelings ran much deeper than friendship. This guy is her comrade in arms, the only one who fought alongside her and had her back, so she believed their bond was stronger than just friendship. Later, Frau asked if it was true that they were very close. When the girl agreed, the child from the flower people said they would become friends too. But Adele looked away sadly. She didn't want to spoil Liz's mood, yet she had to return it because duty demanded it. Adele remembered someone saying that a girl shouldn't get involved with strangers because she deserves better, and if he cares about her, he'll do the right thing. But suddenly, a sharp scream cut through the air as a dead tree came crashing down straight toward Fru, who froze in fear. The princess realized she wouldn't make it in time, while Frau simply reached out her hand as if trying to catch the tree. But Adele reacted quickly and managed to grab the huge log flying straight at the girl. A little later, Liti and Nami watched in amazement as the tree cracked and split apart. Everyone was amazed when they saw the big tree lying behind the girls, but they were even more impressed when Adele broke the tree into logs with her bare hands. The guy noticed that even after the war, the girl kept improving her skills because she was always very hardworking. He saw his friend pick up a twig and gaze at the princess with admiration. It seemed she truly liked her, and now Adele had a fan. The princess supported Frodo as he struggled to break the branch without success, while Lit watched, hoping Adele would like the village too. Everyone was having fun, drinking delicious wine, while only Adele sat quietly on the side, watching everyone in silence. But suddenly Fru approached her and offered a snack. The princess at first declined since she had brought food with her, but quickly changed her mind when she learned that Lit himself had prepared the dish. The girl carefully examined what she was given. Although it was quite greasy, it smelled delicious, so she decided to try it. She took a piece, tasted it, and found it delicious. The lady was happy that the girl liked it. She also thanked Adele for her earlier help, but the princess just said she was simply doing her duty as an escort, yet she accepted the apology and gave a shy smile. Unexpectedly, Lit sat down next to the girls and asked one if life was really as good as theirs. She looked away, as if lost in thought. The princess blushed, looked away and agreed, as she rarely saw anything like that. Lit admitted he resembles her, and that's why this place seems much more beautiful to him. Adele asked if it's because the Empire isn't as picturesque. The girl bowed her head and apologized, thinking she might be the reason he struggled in court, while some believed the princess shouldn't be by his side. But she promised she wouldn't put up with such nonsense anymore and would do everything she could to make things comfortable for him. The girl bowed respectfully and earnestly asked Lita to return to the Empire. She understood and honestly said that losing his talent was as painful as losing 100 years of an empire's history. Then Lit asked if that was exactly what Her Highness Princess Adele meant to say. The girl looked up and said she was born a princess. She couldn't become a knight unless she kept doing what was best for her empire. The young man apologized, but still refused to return to the capital, as he loved growing plants, gathering firewood, and living peacefully in nature without any worries. He thanked Adele for coming to see him, and she felt happy hearing those words. The embarrassed girl covered her face with her hands and said she would leave here first thing tomorrow morning, but she promised herself she'd never give up. One day she'll return and bring light back to the imperial capital. The young man smiled and agreed, but said it would only be after one more barbecue. The girl blushed and added that she'd come back as soon as she sorted out her things. He asked why the girl was in such a hurry, and she replied that she had important plans she couldn't miss. The summer stretched on, and he said it was definitely time for the girl to go to bed. As he was about to leave, she shyly asked if there was only one house here. The girl couldn't sleep in the same place as the boy. He noticed she had truly grown into a princess and seemed to have something planned. Anyway, he was already thinking about building a guest house, so he went ahead and did it, then wished the girl good night. A little later, the animal the princess approached was being untied from the gate. Lit noticed this and, recalling the girl's words about the morning, wondered why she was coming so late in the evening. It was still far from midnight, but Adele, her eyes heavy with sleep, was already climbing onto her monster. Lit, who was still awake, saw this but chose not to disturb her. Meanwhile, by the lake in the forest, a huge cat was sitting and drinking crystal-clear water. In front of him stood a strange stone with a mysterious symbol carved into its surface. A little later, in the Empire's capital, the man explained that taxes in Craig's lands had been raised to the max, and debts were being used like a shield, because the key is to manage people well. Then they become a useful tool. He said he manages his lands however he pleases, just like the Craigs have always done. And his companion noted with interest that they have a special talent for making fools work for them. As he climbed into the carriage, The man said goodbye to the princess and promised he would eagerly await Adele's reply. After the carriage left, Adele's brother watched it go and urged his sister to decide quickly, since this man holds an important position in the empire and used to govern the lands of Craig. The girl lay in the bathtub, staring up at the ceiling, annoyed by his strength, stubbornness, constant talk of loyalty, and bragging about being the best and greatest. She remembered that life in the village of Togen was much more fun than it was here. A little later, back in the village, the trickster admitted she wanted to apologize. But what really surprised Leto wasn't that. It was that she even knew such big words. The boy asked what happened, and the girl sadly lowered her head. She admitted that she had said something unpleasant to Adele. The young man was surprised she could say something like that. And sitting down beside her, he asked exactly what words she had spoken. She remembered saying how much she missed Master Lita being gone, but she couldn't find the words to say it. The girl didn't dare say anything and just bowed her head even lower. But the boy reassured her. Adele won't mind, so there's no need to apologize. He explained that not everything can be put into words, and it's better to show your intentions through actions, especially when it comes to relationships with others. Fraud noticed it was late since the princess had already left, but Lit said there was no need to worry about it. He said he got the news this morning and quickly realized something was wrong, but it turned out to be a mistake. The princess waved her hands happily. The girl realized she had arrived too early, then rushed to Lit and begged him to return to the capital, while Navi calculated that even a high-speed train trip there and back would take 8 days, and Lit pointed out that the princess had left only 7 days ago. Adele admitted that when he gets tired, she has a special way of carrying him. She just gives him a piggyback ride, and while they were talking about it, Frau watched them from the side. She was about to approach Adele and say something, but Lit interrupted her, took out flowers, and sincerely gave them to Adele. The girl was very happy with the gift, but then she got really embarrassed and, scared, fell to the ground. "Let's sit across from the princess." He admitted she was beautiful. She was lulled to sleep by a touch of his finger. The young man did it on purpose, knowing Adele often exaggerates. He asked if she could talk to the princess when she woke up, and the girl eagerly and confidently agreed. The guy went to make dinner while Frav immediately called Navi. Meanwhile, it seemed the princess was having nightmares about the past. Sitting by the broken carriage, the little girl gazed up at the magical sign in the sky. Long ago, after careful preparation and great effort, Adele passed the Order's exam and vowed that on her very first night with the Imperial Guard, she would prove herself worthy of this honor. Memories surfaced again of when she, still a knight, calmed the people and promised them protection. They told her monsters don't come to a place like this and asked how a woman could be a knight. Everyone was sure she would always remain just a spoiled girl. But she remembered Litz's words on the battlefield, when he said he would handle the problem himself, since the princess had already done so much. Litz acknowledged her strength, and that was exactly what she needed at that moment. Everything had changed. Now the girl kept replaying in her mind the conversation with her brother, who asked how much longer she planned to stay up playing at night since the war was over. Her brother admitted he was fed up with everything and even made her an honorary commander. Though she was a weak knight, the girl asked again, surprised and annoyed. What did it all mean? He had a wonderful groom for her, which would have been a perfect match for the princess. Until suddenly, Adele opened her eyes. She lay on the bed in the middle of the room, surrounded by flowers and plants, with her sword standing nearby. The princess suddenly jumped up, realizing the sun was still high and she was still asleep. She thought that Lit had taken care of her by using flowers to ease her fatigue. At first, Adele thought she really needed a break. But then she suddenly jumped up and started doing exercises, deciding it was time to work out. Soon the princess was in the forest, gathering healing herbs and getting some good work done, knowing winter was coming and no one wanted to be left without firewood. But the girl was filled with doubts. She knew she was just running away, and that behaving like this at night was wrong. But if she doesn't return to the capital, it's not a big deal, especially since Adele herself didn't want to go back. She had mixed feelings about it, sensing that something was off. The princess felt like someone was watching her and thought it was the monster. But no matter how hard she looked, she couldn't see anyone. Maybe she just imagined it. But suddenly Frau appeared before the princess and asked if the girl was all right. She woke up very early, but Adele said she was feeling fine, and hearing that, Frau Brie sighed with relief and admitted she was glad to hear it. The princess reassured Frau that he had nothing to worry about, and that she wasn't planning to take any medicine today. She blushed and said she really liked the village of Togen, which is why she decided to go back there. Honestly, the girl herself would have liked to live here, and the scammer didn't expect that, so she looked at the girl by name in surprise. But suddenly something strange happened. The whole forest began to shake. Adele turned around and saw huge sprouts. She immediately realized it was summer magic. quickly apologized and ran back to the village, leaving Fru alone but full of determination. Household items were scattered all around as a huge cat smashed everything in its path, heading toward the Licht house. The boy asked Novians in surprise if the creature had somehow become stronger, and the assistant confirmed after analysis that its magical power had indeed increased. But why did he choose that village if they weren't preparing meat there today? Lita had no chance of catching him anymore. The only option was to get rid of the cat. Still, he asked if the flower people had any Medaba wine. The answer was no. Navi explained that the reason for this behavior was a lack of water, as recently some of it had been redirected to produce berry wine, and Lit froze, realizing what was happening. He looked at the monster threatening his home, and realized it was his own fault. Then Adele called out to him, offering help, but he asked her not to get rid of the cat. He asked to save the residents first because it was too dangerous to stay, and with little time left, the girl decided to follow the order. The girl skillfully dodged the monster's attacks and distracted it by throwing stones, managing to rescue the flower people. She took them to a safe place, then went back and told others to save the rest. She realized she was facing a powerful monster, but compared to the enemies they had faced before, this actually seemed like good news. The girl tripped right in front of the cat and fell, her head spinning and vision blurring. It felt like she had run too long and was now paying the price, but she still knew she had to protect the others. Suddenly, Fraucha appeared in front of her, carrying a bucket filled with something strange. The girl called Fruza's name in surprise, but she didn't even turn around, clearly lost in thought. She poured everything from the bucket right onto the cat, which was already baring its teeth and ready to attack. The little Navi were surprised by this act, as they believed Matatabi's chakra was gone. But at least it worked. Adele told Fraud to run and assured him she was fine. But the girl refused, saying she didn't want to because now it was her turn to protect the princess. Adele remembered how she once cried bitterly in front of the girl who saved her life. She asked her to stop crying, gently stroked her head, and said that next time she would have to protect someone, so there's no time for tears now. As she walked away, a boy followed her, to whom she had advised not to lie or be lazy. He tried to assure her that he was holding back monsters, and it seemed he was succeeding, though the princess had no idea about it. Adele couldn't understand how she could have forgotten something like that. Meanwhile, Lit realized he couldn't wait any longer. 2 lives depended on him. But suddenly he froze, clutching the seats tightly as he saw something incredible. Fraud, arms spread wide, shielded Adele, who sat behind her. And even when the cat raised its paw to strike, the girl didn't flinch. She just squeezed her eyes shut tightly. But suddenly Adele stood up and pushed away the monster's paw, flying at them with one hand. Even the kitten was stunned by her bravery as she looked it confidently in the eye and said she thought she understood something. She hit the cat back and it immediately fell down, surprising everyone watching, even Frau, who was covered in Lidus plants. Adele gave the cat a stern look and ordered him to stand up, leaving the boys even more confused. But the princess didn't stop there. She confidently declared she was ready to prove who was really in charge. She defeated the monster. Confused? She said she just wanted to see what it was capable of. The girl decided not to let it go until the cat got tired. She acted, even though she thought she was just a girl, a princess, and it all seemed like a game, and she felt weak. But in every strike, there was something more than just a will to survive. This feeling is anger. She was angry at herself for losing herself in petty arguments. She must remember that she is a knight who protects her people. She grabbed the cat by the tail and threw it to the ground without giving it a chance. The girl was tired of being the princess everyone had to protect, and had just proven to herself that she was capable of much more. Everyone froze in shock as the defeated monster lay still beside the princess. But only Lid realized that despite Adele's warnings about the danger, she truly had no equal in close combat and was undoubtedly the strongest of them all. A little later, the flower people took the cat back to the eastern mountains, and Frau, gathering her courage, approached Adela and apologized, which surprised the princess greatly. Frau admitted she thought Adele would take the master of flight, which is why she was rude to her. But the princess, not understanding what was going on, simply turned away. But after a moment, she looked at Frau and said they were comrades in arms. And Frau agreed. Now she and the princess were truly friends. An awkward silence fell. Then Adele said she was glad to meet Frau and suggested they switch to a more casual way of talking, since the girl was still being too formal with her. Lit, watching Frau and Adele laughing nearby, thought the girl had responded so politely that she couldn't communicate any other way, while also noting that Frau was a beautiful girl. Then he said it was time to have dinner before cleaning up, and that today he wanted to add his special seasoning, and after that, he asked where the cooking utensils were. It turned out the tiger came for that, and Lit asked the flower people if they knew anything about it. but Navi explained everything and asked him never to share his spices with others again. In the morning, as the sun rose, the princess was getting ready to go home. Fraud asked her to be careful, and Adele thanked her for the help. The girl paused for a moment, then turned back to the young man, who immediately said he wasn't planning to go to the capital, though she actually wanted to say something completely different. She politely bowed, thanked Lit once more for his help to the Romanzi Empire during the century-long war with the demons, and apologized for her rude behavior in the village of Togen. She admitted she knew he wouldn't find happiness in the imperial capital, yet she had driven him away and even dared to come back, all of it foolishness born from her own weakness and naivety. But still, she really didn't want to leave without saying goodbye. The moment froze, surprised by Adele's words. The guy apologized too, and the girl said she understood. She decided to say goodbye to him, but only for a little while. She confidently declared that from now on, she would follow only her own path, and wished her mentor good luck. Smiling, he thanked the girl and told her she could always come to rest with them if she ever felt tired, and they would be happy to see her. At first, the girl just smiled back. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she promised Lita she would visit them often, and the boy agreed and supported her. The princess, her eyes filled with tears, wished everyone a good day, and then she fled to the Empire, determined to keep fighting. Adele always takes on what others can't handle. The boy noticed that the princess was very strong and had always been that way. The determined young man realized there was no escaping. His duty was to protect the village, and he needed to deal quickly with the angry tiger and the water shortage, while wondering what was happening on the mountain. Lit noticed Frau watching Adele thoughtfully as she rode away. Then he suggested they go for a walk. The girl spoke to this boy respectfully and gently tried to refuse him. Then he understood everything and said that next time he would have business in town, and asked if the trickster wanted to come along. After some time in the Empire, specifically in Craig's lands, Julian's servant arrived with news from Princess Adelia. Craig asked if she had agreed to the marriage and noted that this time the wait had been longer than usual. The servant said that, in short, they were refused, and it was even written in big letters. The princess hasn't even arrived at the Empire yet. She's resting somewhere near the village of Togen. The girl stretched, looked at the bright sunrise, and realized it was time to start living. We planted various berries, grapes, potatoes, and turnips that don't need much watering, and also built cozy little houses for guests, creating a truly pleasing sight. Lit, feeling proud, wiped the sweat from his brow after planting the tree. He transplanted his mysterious plant X into the soil. It started as a seed, then sprouted, grew into a seedling, and now it was time to plant it in the ground, which meant everything was growing perfectly, making him very happy. To be honest, he was a bit worried about this mysterious plant. But out loud, he just hoped it would grow well. Navi noticed that this month, his earnings and expenses from red berries, juice, harvest, and other activities far exceeded what he used to make as a court magician. So you could say the village of Togen got off to a very strong start. Their harvest turned out great, but since summer began, there hasn't been any rain. Clearly, there's a water issue, which is strange, yet the plants are still growing so fast that summer can barely keep up with caring for them. But the water problem had to be solved as quickly as possible, so we set off for the town to get what we needed and explore the area along the way. Frau talked to her mom, who asked her to be careful, but Frau reassured her that everything would be fine. The girl put on her cloak and took a dictionary with her. She apologized for taking so long to get ready, but Lit said he had just finished preparing too, and suggested they walk together to the meeting place with the transport guild. Frau agreed, and the young man, noting he hadn't been to the city in a long time, set off on his journey. After a while they were in the carriage. The girl who owned it recognized Lit, said she was glad to see him well, and the boy greeted Mel, noting she looked great. The lady asked the girl her name once more, then calmly reassured her there was nothing to worry about, since Mel was a member of the transport guild, which was connected to Mia. The girl noticed that Lit was very popular with the girls, but the guy nervously asked Mel not to say silly things, especially in front of Fru, and laughed. The girl added that they would only arrive tomorrow morning, so it was better for them to rest now. Navi and Lit noticed Frau flipping through her dictionary, and the assistant immediately realized she was clearly nervous. He explained that since Adele left, it's become harder for her to understand what's going on around her, and he thought the girl needed some help adjusting while still avoiding unnecessary risks. The guys finally arrived, and Mel wished them a good day, reminding them about the evening meeting. At first, they suggest taking a map, but notice Frodo getting even more nervous, which Navi also sees. Yet the guy reassures both girls and suggests they set off. As they walked through the city, the girl got scared of the passing people and looked like she was about to cry. But suddenly Lit called her. They walked into the flower shop, where the staff greeted them warmly, and Lit was surprised to see the selection was much bigger than he had expected. He pointed to the plant and told the girl it was freesia, which smelled so lovely that people started using it as perfume. Frau also noticed its pleasant scent. The young man eagerly told the girl about different plants, grapes, the flexible vine that could even be woven into rope, and other flora. The seller noticed Lit's knowledge of plants and invited them inside. Seeing the unusual plant, the boy was surprised and asked what it was, since he had never seen anything like it before. And the seller explained that some plants, like the greenhouse lily that caught Lita's interest, don't grow in the city. A woman watching quietly chuckled. Then the young man turned to her and asked if she was feeling calmer. Speaking about fraud, he added that the world isn't as bad as it seems, though he only realized this quite recently. The girl smiled and said she felt the same, while the boy noticed a glowing flower in the dark and decided they had to take it with them. When the lady asked for permission to take the bag, the young man agreed. He thanked the girl for agreeing to go with him, and she seriously promised to take good care of her new bag. The meeting time was approaching, and Navi noticed they had been followed since early morning, so the guy asked if there was any way to avoid it. Navi started drawing the map and said to turn right after 300 meters, then left after another 50 meters. Lit grabbed Fru by the shoulders and ran, saying they needed to move faster. But it wasn't just them who sped up. Lit asked Navi about the situation, and she reported that the enemy was already just 50 meters away. Lit and Frau turned the corner, and when their pursuers caught up, they were surprised to find no one there. Just grass beginning to grow beneath their feet. The net dropped right on their pursuers' heads, while their comrade watched from above, eager to find out who had been following them all day. And to their surprise, it was Manhwa with a girl they didn't know. Mia apologized to Lit for what happened, and explained that the girl, Dias from the Artists Guild, is known here as the goddess of the brush and was asked to design the bottle labels. Though not very modest, she paints beautifully. But she said she couldn't design the label until she saw the actual sample. And Manhwa admitted she prefers to conduct interviews in person, which made the young man breathe a sigh of relief. Diaz said she was ready to draw but asked Fraud to take off her hood. The girl was surprised, and Lita even got angry. He replied that the girl wouldn't do it, and Diaz said the portrait on the label should be connected to the flower people. If Freud disagrees, the artist won't paint it, leaving the choice up to them. Then Frau confidently pulled back her hood and said, "If Diaz is a friend of their friends and smells so good, she can be trusted." Diaz was captivated by the girl's beauty and asked her to sit down and smile so she could paint her portrait. The woman forced a smile, but Lit immediately noticed she was mistaken and advised the girl to remember the store they were currently in. Today, the girl remembered her new bag and beautiful flowers, and a genuine smile appeared on her face. Meanwhile, Diaz was busy drawing while the boy watched her work. The lady remembers looking in the mirror with her new bag that Lit had bought for her. Suddenly, Diaz put down the pencil. The drawing was finished. Frau blushed slightly and smiled softly with her eyes closed. When she finished work, the tired cats were already asleep, cuddled up together. The Frau and Litz were very pleased with the work done and thanked Diaz for his help. The girl confessed that ever since childhood, after reading about the flower people in a book, she had dreamed of meeting one and sincerely thanked for the opportunity. The guys were about to leave and said they couldn't wait to see the finished bottles, while Diaz added that she had prepared something special for them. As the boys headed back to Togen village, Let thanked Fraugen for agreeing to go to the city with him, and she happily replied that she had a great time. She clenched her fists and said they absolutely had to go back there, and the boy replied that they would definitely take a walk together again. When Frau fell asleep, Lit asked Navi to report on the situation, and she appeared right away, saying she was already reporting. She remeasured the area between the village of Tohin and the city within a 1-kilometer radius, making the map more accurate, and about 20 kilometers from the city, the landscape gradually becomes less green. Just 30 kilometers away, all the vegetation disappears. Navi explained that only the greenery within a certain radius around the village dies, which looks very unnatural. The city showed no signs of water shortage, so the problem was only nearby them. Lit recalled how the shop owner told him today that his great-grandfather used to say this place was once lush and green, but then the water seemed to disappear and stopped flowing through the area. Navi added that the sea is 30 kilometers west of the village, and the boy replied that even his magic couldn't cover such a distance. But Lit noted that he had already gathered everything needed, and insisted they must try every possible way. A month later, in the Empire's capital, the cats celebrated their victory. Not only bottles with Frau labels became popular, but other labels did too, and sales quickly soared. The girl suggested trying to produce a few more batches of different types. She was very proud of her work with the labels and said they were really lucky to have come up with this idea. But the man standing nearby watched her closely and ordered his servant to keep an eye on that cat. A secret meeting was held in the capital, with the main topic being Lif. It had been 6 months since he left, and it seemed there was no cause for concern. However, his current whereabouts are unknown, as all traces immediately vanished. But that's no surprise, since he's a master at this. He's a man who avoids the spotlight and doesn't chase wealth. Those who crave money and fame are easier to control, but this hero made them uneasy, so they decided to leave him alone. Now that the war is over and they've won, their empire no longer needs heroes. Since he doesn't get in their way, they can just leave him be. Then one of the men asked about his research, but when they learned it was about plants, no one showed any interest, while a council member thought it might be better if their princess were more ordinary. At the same time, but elsewhere, soldiers were discussing why the princess had come to the guild district. They thought she was upset about the war, yet they still couldn't understand why she would return there again. They figured Rickholt was probably to blame again since she kept looking for him, while she herself was actually in a locked archive. She ran along the shelves and cabinets with a flashlight, almost like she was dancing in the dark. A girl in a light dress and heels smiled as she recalled something pleasant while searching for the necessary documents, even though taking them was strictly forbidden. Lit himself asked her to help find out something for him, and although she usually didn't go to the library, today was a special occasion. But for now, the only thing she noticed was the huge amount of dust. The girl finally found the book she needed. It was a shopping list of magical artifacts collected by Abigail the Collector. She took out the book and began studying it. Most of the magical artifacts in the Forbidden Archives were said to have been bought by this man, and as she looked through records from different years and months, she found a note about a seed purchase on July 17, 2017, which deeply impressed her. A week later in the village of Togenlit, he stomped angrily on the ground, unable to understand where all the water had gone. A month had passed since he arrived in the city, and despite trying many ways to solve the water shortage, nothing worked. Summer had come, but the water still hadn't appeared, and the boy realized things couldn't go on like this. Adele approached the tired young man, thanked him for his work, and brought over a tray of food. She placed the food in front of the boy and said that rest is important too, so she brought him chicken soup and ham. Then the hungry boy realized it was already midday. He thanked the princess and apologized for making her work during her vacation, but she didn't mind at all. He noted the dish was delicious as always, praising her unbeatable chicken, even though Lit had never seen her cook anything else. The girl started sharing the information the boy had asked her to find. He immediately asked what she had discovered, and she replied that she found everything at the city library, then pointed to a sprout and asked if that was the mysterious tree. The princess gently touched the leaves, but suddenly a noise came from behind the boys, and Lit immediately turned to see what was happening. Fryo ran up and said a tiger had come and was standing right behind her, surprising the boy since he hadn't shown up again after Adele had chased him away. Lit could no longer let him do whatever he wanted, so he bought special seeds to catch monsters in the city. Navi flew in and apologized, saying she hadn't been noticed for some reason. The princess stood up, asked Lit to stop, and walked over to them. She stopped in front of the tiger and asked if he wanted to say something to her. Adele and the huge cat silently stared into each other's eyes. The creature bowed its head down to the girl's feet. Everyone froze in surprise, and the princess understood what he wanted. She turned to the others and said that the tiger was asking them to follow him. Lit, drenched in sweat, stopped to catch his breath as the boys followed the tiger up the mountain, unsure where it was leading them. It had already been 2 hours since they entered the eastern mountains. Then Navi reminded them that it was all because the host was moving too slowly. Frau asked them not to worry, but Adele interrupted to say they had already arrived. Lit was surprised because there was nothing there. Then he asked if the princess really understood the tiger, and she told the girls she understood him a little. Maybe she has a special gift. Suddenly, everything started shaking, and Fru's flowers and hair began to bloom. Navi explained that a magical reaction was happening ahead. The air of magic was approaching. Suddenly, the trees in front of the company part forming an arch. The forest opened up, revealing a path that led straight to the lake, where the magical stone stood. Lit was amazed that such a place had existed in the mountains all this time. Navi explained that the air here was literally filled with magic. The girl also said that the magic in the air makes magical creatures stronger, and Adelia added, that's why the Frau flowers started glowing, making it the perfect place to admire them. But Frau just asked what they were. The princess explained that it's when people admire the beauty of flowers and spend time together. The girl found it interesting, but asked not to have that arranged for her. The guy was worried. It was a secret area, probably blocked off, which is why the navigator couldn't find it. But to him, it all seemed really exciting. You carefully examined the stone slab, feeling like the pattern looked familiar. Looking around, he realized he was in a very ancient place, and this tiger climbing the rock was his protector. The guy had already tried several spells, but the stone slab didn't react at all. So, Navi shared her thoughts about the stream, saying she believes it holds a faint but pure magical energy that makes the water beneficial not just for plants, but for people too. But this stream is too small and shallow to solve the water problem in Token Village. Even if used, it would only be a temporary fix since it will dry up quickly. Navi concluded that solving the village's water problem was impossible, and even building a water channel would be tough for Lit. The boy agreed, feeling disappointed. Then he asked about the stone slab, but the girl said her database had no information on it and warned that it might be an entrance to a dungeon full of monsters, so activating it without preparation could be very dangerous. The guy sat down and told the girl that the drawing definitely looked familiar to him, and even if it was a trap, he was ready to handle it. Now he was prepared to take any chance. Summer felt upset but managed to calm down, called Fro and Dell, as it was getting dark and time to head home. That was enough for today. He took a small sample of the water, hoping it would help solve the water problem. They still haven't found out anything. Frau suggested going with Lit even at night, but he thanked her and declined, advising them to head home earlier. It's time to throw a party to welcome our new friend. The boys returned to the village of Togen with the tiger, and the flower people were overjoyed to see it. Lit, watching from the side, froze. This big cat seemed incredibly cool to him. Then he turned to Adele and asked what the tiger's name was. The girl said his name was Newsy, and he was the forest guardian. The princess said this boy clearly showed he wanted to be her favorite, so she allowed herself to give him a name, and the boy noted that Adele picked a very simple and typical one. Everyone was happy about the new friend, and the boy petted him, saying he was glad to meet him. A contented tiger licked the boy in greeting, but the boy, covered in the big cat's slobber, clearly wasn't thrilled by the attention. Navi and the guy watched the fun from the sidelines, and the girl noticed that things were getting even louder and more exciting. Monma and the others joined in too, though Lit didn't even notice when they arrived. But as the village elder, he was simply glad to have guests. Seeing that Liz's face had grown serious again, Navi asked if he was still worried about the water problem. The guy stretched tiredly and agreed, thinking aloud about what else they could try. Suddenly Adele approached them and asked if Lit had a moment to continue their conversation about what she had discovered, and the guy jumped up immediately, as if he had completely forgotten about it. Then he asked if she had learned anything about the mysterious tree, and waited anxiously for her answer. The girl said this is the tree of life, and she thinks it's an ash tree. Lit was shocked. How could such a tiny baby become the world's biggest wonder? Adele had only ever heard about him in childhood fairy tales. Long ago, at the very heart of the world, there stood the world tree. Spirits sang and danced in the sky. Pure winds blew all around. Clear streams flowed, and all living beings were filled with mana, making the world rich and joyful. But one day, the world tree disappeared. And over time, mana vanished from the air along with the spirits, leaving people with nothing but sorrow and conflict. This is the legend of the world tree, known only to the royal family back then. Adelia said that according to the information she received, the seed was silver, and the sprout glowed with a rainbow light, just like in the legend. Litz said he has a monocot plant growing, while the world tree is a dicot ash, but there was no sign that this plant was a monocot, which is simply impossible for an ordinary plant. The guy thought it was just an imitation, but in fact, there was more to the story. There's a man named Abigail the Collector who buys strange items from different countries. He works as a court magician, and one day a very unusual object appeared on his shopping list. For some reason, he thought the seed was fake and left it in the room with other useless stuff. Lita was amazed at how well princesses gather information, but she also noted that they were truly worth admiring. It was thanks to him that, for the first time in thousands of years, a new tree of the world appeared in the village of Togen. The boy screamed in terror, realizing the tree would draw too much attention to their village, and he began to blame himself for his excessive curiosity. But then he realized, if the water problem isn't solved, the world tree could die. It seemed everyone was happy, and only he was worried about it. He sat cross-legged, lost in thought. The water was scarce, the stream was strange, the statue unusual, and now the world tree. Problems were getting more serious each time. But Lit pulled himself together, slapped his cheeks, and told himself not to panic. After all, he was the village chief. The guy asked Navi to take a water sample from the stream and test it, and when she asked why the hurry, he said he wanted to activate the monument as soon as possible because they needed any clue they could get. Lit was sure that the monument and the stream would help solve the water shortage problem. Suddenly, Manhwa ran up to Lit and asked if they wanted a drink. The boy immediately noticed she was very drunk, and another cat pushed her away, telling her to move along. Mom quietly grumbled that she felt hurt, making the guy a bit uncomfortable. But Mia stayed with Lit and asked if he was free, to which he apologized and said he had things to do. The girl understood what the boy said, though it clearly upset her, and she looked away sadly. Then Lit finally promised he would find time to talk to Mia. Suddenly, Manmi's voice was heard as she hurriedly warned, holding a jug of spring water and assuring that it would help think more clearly because it was very important. But then Lit suddenly shouted that the water was not to be drunk, scaring the cat. She fell very gently, and all the water poured right onto the world tree. Summer froze in horror, watching the water slowly trickle down the tree, and they didn't even have time to figure out what kind of water it was. The next morning, a worried Frau asked if everything was okay, since Lit hadn't slept at all during the night. The boy spent the whole night sitting under the tree wrapped in a blanket. In the morning, he greeted the girl and explained that he was worried about the baby, so he stayed to take care of him. But the guy still thought he was fine, just needing a bit more attention. Then Navi appeared. The girl said she would take care of him since Lit needed to rest, and although the boy wanted to refuse, he met Navi's serious gaze. She leaned toward this village chief with a stern look, and said he was overthinking it since she'd already promised to help, then asked firmly if he understood, and the boy quickly agreed. Lit thanked Navi and asked Rao to take care of the other fields, and the girl assured him she would handle everything perfectly. Lying on the bed, the guy thought about how exhausted he was after yesterday's hike, and wondered what Mia wanted to talk to him about. Then he decided he would definitely ask her later. The cats returned to the city feeling upset. Manhwa couldn't believe what she had done and knew Lit would definitely be angry. Noticing that Mia was upset too, the girl decided to ask what was wrong, and Mia admitted she had wanted to ask Lit for advice but couldn't. The thing is, 4 days ago something interesting happened in the Empire's capital. Mia was relaxing and celebrating her victory in the economic war, confident that the largest independent guild was already waiting for her. Suddenly, a man approached the cat and noted that she looked perfectly fine. He explained that he was a member of the Virgin's Chalice Guild, which specializes in researching forbidden substances. The girl took off her glasses, surprised to see that this guild was the leading one among researchers. She invited the man to sit, and he thanked her by giving a gift. He explained that they had heard about a trader selling red berries who suddenly appeared in the autonomous region, and his goods were being snapped up instantly. Mia explained that it all happened thanks to a pharmaceutical company she managed to sign a contract with, and that it was simply luck, while the man just remarked that she shouldn't be too modest. The grandfather admits it's a difficult request but asks for help. The girl is surprised to learn that it's not about baskets, but about 100 boxes. The old man points to a document showing an order for 100 boxes, and explains that each box contains 10 baskets. Manmar understands that 1,000 baskets mean 10 times the usual amount. She apologizes for the misunderstanding, but the grandfather says it's too late to cancel the order. The old man says they've already prepared everything to transport the goods and warns that if the girl doesn't do what's needed, they could lose trust in her. He warns that the future of the Heroes Guild is very uncertain. Grandpa says he hopes to receive the goods within 10 days, and she also mentions that once she was a bit tipsy and spilled water, but insists it wasn't her fault. He asks how much time is left until the deadline, and the girl replies that there are only 6 days left. The hero decides to return to the village and ask Lord Rit for help. The main character wonders if she can always rely on her owner, since he has his own matters to attend to. She believes the master can help this time, but Manhwa points out that the village of Torgen won't gather enough red berries in time and adds that there's also a shortage of water. The main character says it's worth putting together a collection of stories about the village of Torgen. She believes that if she hadn't drunk back then, she might have avoided this problem now. One of the girls suggests trying a special donut she made herself. Rit finds out that a guest from the village of Torgen has arrived and asks if they have any plans for the day. Manhwa regrets what has happened recently. She says she often causes trouble. The hero notices the tree is fine but can't understand why it looks that way. A girl asks for help, showing her notebook. Rit flips through this notebook and sees spells for opening, closing, and other actions, noticing that the book is well organized and easy to understand. Men says she needs to gather 900 baskets of red berries, and Rit is surprised, asking how that relates to the monument. The girl says she's the journalist and knows where to find information on how to gather the right amount of berries. The hero notices the girl's messy hair and dark circles under her eyes, then firmly says they're heading out for information right away, and he'll take care of the world tree himself. Manhwa asks in surprise how it even happened. He was still wondering if they needed another key besides the spell. Rit asked how many days they had left, and the girl said they had 4 days to spare. Considering the travel time, the heroes realize they have only 3 days left. Rit believes that from what he heard, it's clear Mia is not to blame, and he also realizes the whole situation is a lie. We have to assume that someone deliberately set a trap for Mia. The hero explains that something like this has happened before in Goltlin, and he can't stand it, so he speaks up right away. The girl agrees, saying that situations like this happen everywhere, and she adds that thanks to these events, she met Mr. Rito and Mia, which she's very happy about. Everyone notices that they act just like thieves, no different from businessmen. Rit suggests first identifying your opponent's weak spots. Manhwa asks for permission to go home because she urgently needs to return. The main character says she can handle it herself and emphasizes that she's a journalist. The girl is holding something, and Rit says that if it gets dangerous, she'll throw it at him. The hero happily says he always knew she was an excellent journalist. Manhwa suggests lowering the price the next day, but the merchant insists he won't change his mind. Hairwind confidently declares that he'll catch the thieves by the tail, and there's only 3 days left to do it. Manhwa learns that a man named Paral was met by Miea, and they say Paral is an important figure in the Cup Guild. She explains that inside the Winged Pens Guild, there's a conflict between different factions, and that Purell leads the group that supports materialism. A man asks if Manhwa is tired of these crazy stories, and the girl, offended that her story was called crazy, says she's not tired of them at all. Manhwa asks the man if he knows anything about this woman, and Joe says Pearl has too much security. Joe says Perel goes to bars 5 times a week. There's a nice place in the neighboring town. Momon notices that Perel is nearby. Pearl from the Cup Guild is also present at the meeting. The main character notices that the guy nearby is definitely from the Winemakers Guild. A girl introduces herself as Remy and asks if this is the other girl's first time here. The heroine confirms that Remy is indeed here for the first time and adds that she's very fluffy. Manhwa wonders why these visitors are always so noisy. Remy notices that these visitors used to be gloomy. The heroine is surprised to hear the word gloomy, and Remy points to a man from the Winemakers Guild. Remy also noticed that wines with cat images on the label have become popular lately, and Manhwa suggests that maybe buyers want to eliminate the competition since Miyu was tricked with her order. Another character reminds them not to talk about clients, and Mia suggests they're probably just both beast people. The main character notices that there are a lot of beast-like people here. The old man says he'll be leaving soon, and Manhwa asks what people are talking about in the bar. The main character recalls that Perel stayed at this very inn, and wonders why he went to the neighboring town, since this inn is known for hosting beast people. Manhwa decides to gather evidence against Perel and plans to blackmail him. 6 years ago, the hero was frustrated with the problems delivering goods from the imperial capital. The hero is surprised that Mia left in the middle of the workday, while Mia is happy to learn that Manhwa is alive. Mia proudly shows off her special donuts and invites everyone to try them. The heroine notices he has developed a great appetite and suggests they go to the hospital together. Mia is happy to announce that she has finally opened her stall. Mia says this is a step toward her dream, then asks the girl if she has a dream of her own. Mom admits she just ran away when things got too tough. Nia admires the heroine and thinks she's simply amazing. The heroine explains that you can't stop at what you've achieved because escaping is just the beginning, and she emphasizes that she managed to escape, which is amazing. Manhwa was surprised to hear she was wonderful, but Mia confirmed it and added that she was truly awesome. Mia says she wants to become very rich, and the main character asks her what she'll do once she has all that money. Manhwa commands to stop and return what was taken. The girl wonders how the heroine found out the man ran away, and Manhwa adds that she saw him in the newspaper ads. Mia suggests that Manmi try journalism, noting that it's now her new dream. The heroine is praised for her strong character and journalistic skills. The main character notices the man stepping out of the hotel. The old man realizes he's running late, and the hero thanks him for still finding the time to visit. The girl quietly says that cats behave like liquids. The man says it's calm in the south, and the old man suggests getting straight to business since he's tired. They have received good quality goods to buy. He reports that elegant beast girls have just arrived straight from the Empire's capital. The main character realizes how serious the situation is, since trading living beings is strictly forbidden on the southern continent, and she decides to speak out publicly, calling the trader a true devil. Pirelli wonders why the hero has so many customers, and the hero explains that these goods are very popular in the Empire. He asks about the red berries, and the other character points out that they really are trapped, just like he said before. The grandfather says the Winemakers Guild is helping him and reminds the man that this isn't an empire where everyone is treated harshly. The merchant thanks the grandfather for his support. They tried hard to wipe out the red berry supplier. The hero wonders who's behind it all and suspects someone from the imperial capital. Mom is also surprised why Mia became their target, and the main character explains that the red berries have become scarce due to a bad harvest and poor weather. Someone notices Manmu and asks what she's doing here. Manma got scared when she saw a man with a knife. The man thinks it's a rat, but the seller insists it's not a rat. It's an insect. The main character says she was on the brink of death. Another character says irritably that they don't like insects. The heroine knows that right now the most important thing is to escape. Manma says he won't open the door, but the key fits perfectly. A girl tries to open the door with her head and ends up rolling outside. The man is surprised to notice that the door is supposed to open only inward. Perel realizes she's from the Information Guild, and they decide to act fast to catch her. The merchant says they need to move on and refuses to help with the village's problems. She also mentions that he buys beast people in the Empire and resells them on the southern continent. The heroine is puzzled, not understanding why anyone would work with the Emperor to deal with the red berries. The girl realizes she has almost no strength left. The heroine declares she won't run away anymore. Manhwa urges you to use your special talisman. Grandpa says that one rat won't cause much harm, but by tomorrow nothing will be left of this place. Rin says this gives him goosebumps. Delivery day. Manema has arrived at the Perel estate. She introduces herself as Lady Manhwa from the Information Guild. The main character tells Perel that they plan to publish another article today. The article says that Perel, one of the leaders of the Maiden's Cup Guild, is secretly meeting with a mysterious man from the Empire. Manhwa says that besides trading creatures and influencing the market, there might also be espionage benefiting the Empire. Here, I ask if this is a new comedy segment, and she replies that the Information Guild only shares the truth. The main character says she heard the Emperor owns a restaurant in this city. Manhwa says the guild artist did a great job painting the portrait. It looks very much like the real person. She also adds that he was recognized yesterday, and the heroine notes that the Emperor was at the port and plans to board a ship tomorrow heading to the imperial capital. She admits there's no direct proof yet, but it's true. The girl says the evidence will surface soon and suggests questioning the company workers who installed the lab equipment or the 3 beast-like people brought in yesterday. He believed that all problems were caused by fools, and with a sigh, Grandpa added that there were plenty of such people down south too. He points out that the store has already burned down and there are no workers left inside. She also points out that they run fast but don't always think, and Manhwa adds that the Information Guild keeps things in order here. Perel notes that if the heroine needed nothing, she would have published the article long ago. The girl confirms they understand the situation and says she's satisfied with that. The main character explains that contracts are fully binding in Heartland, and offers to sign a document guaranteeing that all the articles will be burned. Perel refuses to comply with the demand, saying it's impossible for him, and adds that people like them would have no trouble getting rid of some stupid cat. Manhwa explains that this is why the locals cling to the Empire's rule, as the guilds hold immense power here, and even the wealthiest individuals can't stand against them. The main character speaks to the leader of the Maiden's Cup Guild, reminding him that he knows exactly what's going on here. The girl says that the winged hand, marked with information, is just as strong as their guild, and warns not to underestimate the situation. She offers to sign the contract or spend the rest of your life behind bars. The guild leader firmly declares that they will leave this place immediately. The heroine notices a crowd gathered outside with a patrol nearby. Manhwa reminds that she kept her promise and deleted her article, just as agreed. She said that someone she didn't know had taken her sketches and published an article under their own name, stealing all the credit. The police approach Perel and ask to speak with him. The main character decides to stop by and grab some donuts. Mia notices a new store on the main street, perfectly located in a prime spot. We've also welcomed many new, friendly team members. The main character says they apologized and admitted they made a mistake when processing the order. Mom says in surprise that she doesn't understand anything, but she probably has a talent for it. She notices the situation suddenly got worse, and Mia can't believe how much the store has changed. The main character suggests trying something new and reassures everyone that there's no need to worry. Mia says she already knows exactly what sign she needs and decides to order it from the guild's artists. The main character realizes that the new place needs a new name. Mia says they're starting a new journey toward their dream, but the name New Journey is too long for the store. The heroine happily says that wealth is now just within reach. Mia believes that success is a kind of talent, and emphasizes that everything depends solely on the individual. Madame adds that she wants to try journalism and asks for permission to stay a little longer. Mia says she's always happy to help her friends, and the main character promises she will definitely repay the favor someday. The heroine says she's ready to wait as long as it takes. Here you can buy wine and other products made in the village of Torgen, which was mentioned earlier. Also, note the article's title, A New Journey from Heartland Main Street 1-3, written by Manhwa and illustrated by Diaz. The hero sums up. The heroine forced Perel to give up his land and property so Mia could continue carrying out the orders. Manhwa says it's all about an eye for an eye, and claims that Perel was the one who started this whole thing. She decides not to tell anyone yet about the Imperial Spies' connection to the Red Berries, to avoid angering Mr. Ritt unnecessarily. Rita is relieved that everything ended without any casualties, and asks to be praised for a job well done. The girl doesn't know when he noticed, and she says her scar doesn't hurt anymore. She wrote that she managed to handle the situation. The main character is happy about this, but asks not to tell Mia. The heroine declares that now it's her turn to help others. Manhwa studied ancient farming methods and explains that she researched old documents about spirits. The main character says she has discovered the true purpose of these ruins, The merchant notes that without wars, the development of magic would be delayed by 100 years. The hero realizes that no one noticed the documents were forged. He says his priorities are different right now and we need to wait until things settle down. Manhwa wrote in the article that she used plant magic, and the merchant adds that he hasn't heard about that in a long time. The hero reports that the enemy hero is hiding in the south. The girl says she has no idea what's going on. The box won't open, even though Manhwa said the magic was supposed to help. The girl points to the dungeon where the monster controls the water. Maret doubts the accuracy of this data, but the guild member insists their organization has already verified the information. The hero wonders if the dungeon is sealed because they haven't yet found something important to unlock the entrance. Mia suggests taking a break for a snack, saying tea helps clear the mind, though she admits the food is delicious and she'd actually prefer a glass of wine over tea. The host warns that it's very hot right now and we need to watch our water intake carefully, especially for cat-like animals. The girl explains that their area is located south of the Empire, so it's dry and warm here, and summer has just begun. The heroes are worried because this region hasn't seen rain for 4 months, and the water shortage problem still isn't solved. Mia noticed that the water level in the pond hadn't dropped, even though the drought had lasted for a long time. The heroes notice that the water level in the pond hasn't changed at all, even though the sun has been shining all day. The hero notices something strange happening at the pond. Rit suspects that the pond and the monument are somehow connected. He says that Mia is doing great, but due to a water shortage, supplies might run out, and the red berries important for healing are also starting to run low. The hero suggests to Nabi to dig a hole in the ground to create a passage to the underground, solving the water problem that way. The prophet warns that such actions are dangerous and their consequences hard to predict. The main character confidently says she has a different idea, and suggests changing the location to discuss the situation with everyone. Rit firmly declared that he will defend his homeland and seize every opportunity, no matter how small, to do so. The heroes decide to act together and launch the operation first thing tomorrow morning. Rit adds that he won't have any other choice, and admits that his options depend on the teams. The hero wonders where he has ended up. Rit sees a girl standing right in front of him. She asks the guy his name, and he replies that it's Rit. A group of heroes meet. Nabi, Mama, Mia, Adele, Nosy, the Flower People, and Frau. The hero declares he is ready to do anything to protect his homeland. He admits he doesn't want to leave the village of Torgen because he's already settled in there. She says she'll get a name only when she grows up, and the hero asks what her name is. The hero understands what's happening and says he'll come up with a name for her. He smiles and says that the world tree needs the most beautiful name imaginable. The girl gently touches the hero's head. The hero calls out Nabi's name and recognizes the girl with surprise. The main character addresses Mr. Rit and informs him that an emergency launch is starting. Rit earns the title of World Tree Benefactor and gains the skills of depth and lightness in everything. Mia asks Rita if he is okay. Rit calms the hero, assuring him that everything is fine, and adds that 10 years have passed since the last event. He confidently says he'll go to the monument. Manhwa asks to join him, but Nebi warns that it's dangerous there. The main character says that Fru knows these mountains well and offers to be their guide. A group of heroes activates their skills, combining depth and ease, as they prepare to take on their mission. Manhwa receives an order to cast a magical spell. The title Benefactor of the World Tree deactivated a special barrier, but the hero asked in surprise what kind of piece this was. The hero reflects on the computer he missed. Rit notices a powerful whirlpool pulling in water and forming a deep funnel. He also points out that the place where Nebi's body was found looked the same and insists it definitely wasn't a dungeon. The heroes spot a grand building. The Temple of the Spirit, the Undine's Temple. Manhwa says the temple looks absolutely incredible. The title Benefactor of the World Tree deactivated the special barrier and opened the way for the heroes. The gates of the Undine Temple open before the heroes. The heroes notice a passage leading down but see that the temple entrance is deep and dark. Rit suggests going down alone, but the others insist on going together. Nama excitedly says their story will make history, and Frau is determined not to let them down. The hero tells everyone to follow him and warns them not to stray too far. The girl notices the ground trembling slightly, while Rit is happy that the moonlight lit their path. Frau is scared because there's no one around, while Manhwa laughs cheerfully as if nothing happened. And then Rit asks Manhwa if she's not afraid. Rit points out the bright glow of the moss, saying that the deeper they go, the more varieties they find. The hero notices it's just a crab, and Frau adds that the Manhwa smells like sun and ink. He points to the altar standing in the middle of the room. Another hero says there's some kind of answer at the center of the altar. The heroes concluded that this altar was most likely used for spirit worship. The heroes notice they're being invited to come inside. Rit notices that the plants are growing faster, but the water level hasn't changed. When asked how much water he took, the hero replied that the magical water keeps replenishing itself, even if you scoop out a little. The hero confidently says he'll have to dive in. Rit wonders whether it's symbiosis or parasitism and says she'd like to learn more about it. The hero thanks Frau for allowing him to take a few leaves to boost the effect, and Frau agrees, assuring him that everything will be fine. Rit suggests adding glowing moss. Nibi confirms that all vital signs are normal and everything is ready, explaining that his decision was inspired by how flower people bask in the sun. He calls this device a herb ball, claiming that even a small amount of light is enough to produce oxygen, allowing them to breathe underwater. Rit asks if the heroes trust him. The girl says the owner just can't come up with good names, and Manhwa tells Frau she's too soft-hearted. Rit asks her if she's really going with them, and the main character admits she's afraid of water. The main character suggests Frau wait here, but she's worried and unsure about staying alone. The family explains that if the red flower wilts, it means they won't return, and he asks her to stay in the village and write a letter to Adele. Rit says she's the backup, and the heroine agrees to take on this important task. The hero is about to set off on a journey. A woman asks why Manhwa isn't coming with them. The girl wishes the heroes good luck, and the hero uses his investigation skill. The heroes notice that the glowing moss helps them see better in the dark, even though they're now in a cave, not a temple. Rick sees that Manhwa is fine and asks where they should go next. Nabi says that because of the mana in the water, it's hard to move and creates obstacles, so everyone should be careful. The main character says that the most important thing right now is to protect Manmu. The hero notices a lot of underwater plants and guesses it might be because of some kind of mana in the water. Rit is surprised that there are plants he doesn't know, and explains that the local plant magic combines water and earth magic, admitting that studying these plants is really fascinating. The hero is amazed by all the new things he's discovering about the world, especially about seaweed, and promises to keep learning about it. A group of heroes suddenly senses a powerful magical surge, a sign that someone or something is rapidly approaching them. Rit notices how good it feels to be in the water, and says that it's really beautiful here. Fraud mistakenly called the hero Sir, again, apologizing for her lack of experience in speaking human language. Flower people say they can share thoughts without words, just passing them directly to each other. A mother wonders if she's ready to take risks for the sake of her job. Every day, Fraud dreams of traveling the world and wants to learn how to become stronger to protect others. She also wonders how she can be like Rit. The hero notices that the landscape looks like a starry sky. The woman says she wants to go back there again, and the girl replies that the sky she's already seen is her favorite. The main character suddenly hears footsteps and starts to worry, fearing she won't be able to call for help. A terrifying creature appears with its jaws wide open, revealing sharp teeth. Nabi starts to figure out what's going on, while Rit warns everyone that dangers are all around. Fish people appear before the heroes. The hero exclaims in surprise upon seeing the fishermen. He wonders if they've been here all along and notices that these fish people resemble someone. A young man notices that ever since he arrived on the southern continent, he's been encountering something new and unusual at every turn. He asks the sky what's going on, since he hasn't noticed anything himself. The prophet says everyone must hold tightly to the grass ball to stay safe, and the heroine admits she was scared when someone spoke in her voice. The heroes notice there are no signs of aggression around and wonder, are these creatures crying or dancing? At the same time, they spot some new activity. Frau calls out to Rita while sitting on horseback. The heroes talk about a strange creature that looks like a horse, and Frau surprises everyone by climbing on its back. Rit notices the creature's eyes shining and seashells growing on its hooves, immediately catching his attention with these unusual details. The search ends when we discover the seaweed bee, a strange creature that blends features of a horse and a water spirit. Nabi asks Frau if she understands the master, and she says she does. The heroes notice that Frau communicates with the creatures using gestures. Frau says she's in a bubble where she can breathe without leaves, and Rit asks where the air comes from in there. Fraud recalls the grass ball that lets her breathe underwater. The hero asks how the plants on Fruzy affected her brain activity, and says he'd like to study it, noting this is already the second time today. Rit asks what the creatures around them are saying. The heroine says these creatures are showing them the way and inviting them to come closer. The girl adds that these creatures are asking for help. The heroes remembered that long ago. When the world tree disappeared, the water spirit fell asleep, so they closed the temple to protect Undima, the water spirit. The hero thanks her for the excellent translation and notes how deep they already are, adding that without Kelpie in the bubbles, they wouldn't have made it this far. The heroes notice that everything around them is huge and beautiful. They take in the grand and impressive architecture all around. The heroes are not in a grand hall with luxurious architecture and soft lighting. Rit says there's no one here. Manhwa says they need to write everything down while they're on land, and Rit asks about Frau. The hero notices that Nabi is starting to lose control. The blessing of the world tree was activated. The rhythm repeats faster. The hero and Frau stand together with the fisherman. Rit notices that the creature has translucent blue skin and ears that look like fish fins, and she also sees that its dress moves as if it's made of water. He points to an invisible object, the spirit of the water. The hero tells the story of the awakening of Andin. The main character notices the creatures bowing like they do in Japan, and says they seem very happy. The hero watches in surprise as a girl suddenly appears before him. Undine calls human children arrogant and says they are foolish sprouts that will never grow. She accuses the heroes of destroying their sacred tree and disturbing her peaceful sleep. The group of heroes notices that she is very angry. Rita calls Undine to tell her where everything will take place. The main character notices that magic has created a water blade that could seriously injure him. She has red hair and has felt that way for a long time. Undying accuses the hero of trying to uncover sacred secrets that should remain hidden and expresses his displeasure. Rin sees that his words have upset the woman. Confident he can fix the situation, Nabi asks the master to stay focused. Brow asks Mr. Rita to open the door, while Manhwa declares that if they're going to die, it might as well be under the influence of alcohol. The girl proudly explains that this wine was made from berries gathered by the whole village, despite the lack of water and dry soil. The hero uses mid-level management skills by carefully listening to the client's complaints and asking them to explain their situation. The heroes are sitting around a table filled with all kinds of food. The water spirit Undine is angry and upset, saying that even if she sleeps for a long time, her anger won't go away, and she blames the heroes for making her fall asleep. The hero looks worried and apologizes sincerely for what happened, while Manhwa also notices that Rin and Undine are constantly whispering to each other. The woman asks if she did everything right, and Rit thanks her for saving him. While Rit entertained the Undine, Frau brought a fresh batch of wine and snacks from the village. Undine is delighted by the wonderful taste of the wine, and Rit is happy they managed to please the water spirit. A young man invites you to try the dishes made in their village, and shares stories about the local traditions. Undine says this reminded her of the past. She remembers the old days when magic still existed, and everyone would gather to share fascinating stories and enjoy some wine together. Undine notices that these creatures they encountered had no physical injuries, completely absorbed natural mana, and then suddenly vanished. The main character sadly explains that when the world tree withered, the entire world lost all its colors. Rita wondered if people were really to blame for their own troubles. The hero realizes that, in the end, all worlds are the same. Undine confirms that today, almost no natural magic remains in the world. She admits that Rit managed to block her attack, even though there was no magical energy in the temple. The hero explains that modern magic doesn't require natural mana. It's enough to use the mana stored within the body. Undine says people often do this, giving gifts and help to a strong warrior, and asks what they want from her. The main character asks why she was woken up. Rit says they need water, and as long as she sleeps, the drought will continue. Undine refuses to help, saying she has no reason to aid those who destroyed the world. Fraud tells Indiana that Mr. Ritz saved them from the flower people. She says that thanks to their hard work, they now have delicious products. The girl explains that for spirits like Undine, natural mana is as essential to life as air is to humans. The main character says that without natural magic, they face extinction, even though everyone already understands this perfectly well. Undine accuses humans of destroying the world tree. She says that after everything people have done, they still ask her to do something. Undine sees this as a form of mockery. Undine accuses the heroes of restoring the world only for their own gain, calling them disgusting monsters. The hero admits he understands everything and agrees that what happened was wrong, which is why he left the Empire. The pawn tells Undine that things aren't at all as she thinks, and that Mr. Rit really is who he says he is. Undine says that sooner or later, humans will destroy them anyway, so if there's anyone to hate, it's better to hate humans. Rit claims that only ambition drives him. He admits that he is a real monster. Undine warns, one more word and she'll chop off her conversation partner's head. The hero is tied up by tentacles and is trying to say something. He wanted to study magic and plants and explained that he planned to live alone. The hero admits that his desires changed when he found himself on the southern continent. He replies that their desires are completely aligned, and Rit asks if maybe they should join forces. The hero says that if Undine helps with the water, he can restore this place to its former beauty. Undine wonders what a tiny creature like him can actually do. She says the world tree no longer exists. Rit says that the world tree grows right in their village, and everything around it blooms. She is amazed to learn that the world tree belongs to people and says she can't believe it. The hero himself doesn't fully understand what's happening, so Nabi offers to fill him in on the details. Rit notices that the water is warm. The girl asks the hero's name, and he replies that his name is Rit Rickard. Andin says she will share her power only once, and the heroes thank her for the help. The hero was surprised that this power would only last for 100 years. Undine explains that for her, 100 years feels like a single moment, while for humans, it's several generations. The man suggests releasing the water flow, but Undine points out that there's nothing that can be done right now. The hero asks, "If you pour water on dry soil, will trees grow there?" But then the trees would just get flooded. Undine explains that plant roots loosen the soil, making it easier for water to soak in. She says it's better to introduce changes gradually so the environment can adapt, and in about 100 years, this place will come alive. Reet says we need to act immediately because he made a promise, and Undina admits she feels her behavior lacks naturalness. The hero has an idea and wants to share it with everyone. Manhwa is sure you can't plant trees all over the hill at once, but it has to be done. Mia says everything will work out and confidently assures that Mr. Rit will help them again. Manhwa says she believes in him, as always, and today is a very important day for her wine. The hero calls out to Undine, asking her to wake up. Undine says she still doesn't feel the natural mana and notices that the surroundings have changed. The hero asks the creature to forgive him and says they'll soon be able to swim together. The main character says that if the world tree is reborn, then the world can heal too. So she suggests just waiting. Undine agrees to help for one day as a thank you for the wine and suggests getting started. Rit thanks her and says that's more than enough for him. The hero confidently promises to keep his word. Andon says she didn't expect that. The magic of the rain begins to take effect. The hero asks Nabi for help, and she says she understands what he wants. Accelerated growth is shown through the rapid development of plants. Although the result was minor, as expected, only a few trees eventually grew. The hero sees someone enter and is surprised by what's happening. He notes that young shoots are already starting to appear all over the mountain. The girl asks how the hero managed to do it. Rit explains that he used air magic, but his power isn't enough to do it all. He says he controls a power that speeds up tree growth to keep them from getting too big, and to keep them in check. The girl asks how these flower creatures can use magic, and the hero notices that they don't understand what's being talked about. As expected, people who work with flowers have a natural connection with plants, and he even says he can actually communicate with them. Rit explains that thanks to Manmi's research, they were able to select the best seeds for the mountains, and Mia bought those seeds. Nusi brought seeds and signaled how the people of Torgan village can work together for a common goal. The main character happily watches as the plants begin to grow. The hero thanks everyone, saying he couldn't have managed without their help. The girl emphasizes that without the magic of the world tree, this simply can't be done. Unda smells the fresh scent of greenery and says the breeze feels really nice. She says they're not done yet and turns back to Returnee Cart, who stresses that this is just the beginning. Title Benefactor of the World Tree activated. The hero asks Undine to share her power with him. He says he's already made his choice, and she understands the situation and agrees to help. Through a powerful magical reaction, the Undine transforms. The hero says the preparations are complete, and now it's time to see the results of their actions. Water that carries the will of the world tree. A powerful surge of water is happening. The result is a picturesque forest filled with trees. The main character happily says that everything worked out. I'm proud of Undina and grateful for her help. Rit says she's had enough, demands the hero be quiet, and even claims she knows more about these places than anyone else. The call of the world tree as the heroes celebrate by the riverbank. The main character recalls her past. Pharaoh decides to thank Mr. Reedy. The hero asks Frau to hold his hand. Rit says his body acted on its own and he apologizes for what happened. He happily says that their plan succeeded thanks to their teamwork. Fall says that Rit isn't just about him alone, but a true team effort. The main heroine excitedly addresses the hero as Mr. Rit and says that he is the one who saved them. The hero refuses. He admits that people have always seemed disgusting to him. Rit says he became a hero to stand out from the crowd. The hero has only recently realized his mistakes and now sees that he missed a lot of important things. He knows he could have said and done much more. The hero admits he left everything behind to live alone, wanting to be surrounded only by beautiful plants, and he thinks this choice was foolish, selfish, and awful. Rit says he's just an ordinary, miserable person, while Frau admits she finds him hard to understand, but believes he's a good man. The hero recalls how the girl took his hand, and in that moment, he understood himself better. Finally, he accepts himself just as he is, and it feels amazing. Rita adds that she doesn't like being called mistress and wants them to be equals. The girl apologizes for interrupting their conversation, but points out the waterfall right in front of them. Rit asks why Frau didn't tell him earlier, and she apologizes, saying she didn't want to get in the way. The hero explains he can't steer the raft, so they'll have to jump. Fishermen help the heroes overcome their challenges. The main character notices that Mr. Rit looks a bit strange. Rit says the idea of a flower-shaped pillow is really great. The hero asks Frau if she's all right. The lady thanks Rita for becoming her friend. Rit agrees and confirms that they are friends. He thanks Frau for her help. The main character calls Rita to remind her that they're almost at the village, and now is not the time for jokes. The hero happily announces that everything went according to plan, but the girls notice something strange happening with the world tree. The girl notices that the tree has grown a whole meter. The main character first speaks to Rita, then turns to her father.